This conference will now be recorded.
Not, I didn't hear it.
I didn't hear it.
Oh, is that zero? That's why. Now we're up. Let's see.
This conference will now be recorded.
There we go.
Good evening, everyone. It is 7:01. It is Monday, November 1st, 2021. If I could please get everyone to silence your cell phones and rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Mrs. Anderson, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Frederick.
Here.
Councilmember Brown.
Here.
Councilmember Chapman.
Here.
Councilmember Holland. Present. Councilmember Smith.
Here.
Councilmember Plaza.
Here.
Councilmember Grant.
Here.
Everyone is here and appointed, accounted for. Next, we're moving on to citizen communication for items not on the agenda. And I have one person signed up this evening who is Mr. Travis Goddard. Mr. Goddard, I'll give you 5 minutes.
Thank you. So I want to start by saying I'm not here in my official capacity. My following opinion is as someone who works in the community, but not as a resident. Accordingly, I'd like to give my opinion on a recent video posted online about the city council and city leadership. First, it smacks of disgruntled anger and her feeling of petty revenge and songs to a fault. It does not reflect current staff's optimism for the city's direction. I apologize for the immature way that the video treats you. Furthermore, I consider it a veiled threat to each of you and even to some of the staff. In today's atmosphere, to imply that elected officials are purposely doing evil work behind the backs of the people is not only deceitful, it is dangerous. The video blatantly misrepresents the opinions of city leaders in a way that is intended to undermine the integrity of the entire city. It implies that action should be taken to keep this evil from occurring and that the city's elected leaders are intentionally harming the community. That's unfair. It's the kind of irrational rhetoric that leads to the distrust and violence that many communities are experiencing. From school boards to city councils, from downtown Portland to the U.S. Capitol, communities seem ripe for violence. And this video is the perfect fuel aimed to incite distrust, hate, and potentially violence. I say this because it is specific in aiming its venom at you for no better reason than the maker apparently does not like the direction of your leadership. Please take this venom. Please take the venom in this video seriously. Don't be intimidated, but protect yourselves from the potential backlash to the cause of the community. I would encourage you to be proactive in protecting your integrity and the community. Do we need to call the FBI? Maybe, but probably not. But for those members of the community who are listening and watching this crap, please take your time to talk to your elected officials. They represent you. Don't get your opinions from social media. Don't believe posts because they look professionally produced. You don't actually know who is giving you that opinion. The truth is, and the point the video misses, is that there is no substitute for talking to people face to face and building positive relationships. Yes, the city did get fined, but it was fine because your elected officials insist on being available to talk to you face to face during the pandemic. To me, that sounds like principled integrity, not selfishness or incompetence. Don't succumb to anonymously produced venom on social media. Please be better. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goddard. I appreciate that. Anyone else in the gallery who failed to sign up for items not on the agenda this evening? Seeing none, is there anyone online for items not on the agenda? Seeing none, moving on to items on the agenda. I have no one signed up in the gallery. Is there anyone here that would like to sign up for that at this time? Seeing no one, anyone online for items on the agenda this evening?
Mr. Mayor, this is Jennifer Ray Keene. I'd like to speak about something on the agenda.
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Okay, I wanted to address item G, I believe it is, on the purchase of the property next to the city council or city hall. I'm sorry.
Action item G, yes, that is correct. Go ahead.
Wanted to voice my support for the purchase of that property. And I'm speaking as a citizen, not as the port director. Thank you. But knowing how much it costs to purchase property and develop a property, that's just so outside of the city's current financial means right now that I think that is a prudent action to buy that property next door, to be able to think in the future for expanding space for your current and expanding staff. And so I think that's a very good idea. I know that, Mayor, you've looked at other options with the library property and things like that. And obviously those are very expensive options. So I fully support the action of that being approved, and look forward to seeing that the city hall be able to expand and accommodate the staff.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. All right, anyone else online for items on the agenda? Seeing none. Moving on to agenda approval. Or I'm sorry, moving on to the agenda. Not that I'm suggesting it should be approved, but that's up to you.
Move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Moved by Council Member Plaza, second by Council Member Rounds. Mrs. Anderson. Did I cover that one more? There we go.
Councilmember Chapman.
Aye.
Councilmember Graham.
Aye.
Councilmember Collins. Aye. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Frederick.
Aye.
Councilmember Brown.
Aye.
And Councilmember Plaza.
Aye.
The agenda has been approved. The time is now 7:08. We will be moving into a public hearing regarding 2022 property tax levy. I have no one signed up at this time. Is there anyone in the gallery that would like to speak during the public hearing? For the record, the doors are unlocked.
Don't everyone rush.
Seeing none, moving to those online. For the public hearing, anyone would like to speak to the public hearing this evening? Seeing no one, we will be closing the public hearing on 2022 property tax levy. Moving on to reports of the City Council. Mr. Fredericks.
Ms. Rounds was first.
Oh, I looked that way and I didn't see her. Mrs. Rounds.
I just got back yesterday afternoon from Pocatello, Idaho. I was over to see my newest grandbaby that was
Congratulations.
born over there, and he is precious.
Nice. Congratulations. Everybody's healthy and well.
Oh, yeah.
Nice. And you made it back safely before the snows hit.
Yes.
Good. Mr. Fredericks.
Ms. Coleman, thank you for I know you were the one that got it pushing forward with the state to get the markings over there by the liquor store. Maybe
The Shell station.
the Shell station by the liquor store. Thank you. It looks fantastic.
Luckman's
Yeah,
coffee might be more appropriate, Mr. Fredericks.
Truth be told, I've probably been to the liquor store more than I've been to Luckman's Coffee, and I apologize.
You are a council member.
But, you know,
Revenues will be down for them next year when you're no longer here.
yes,
That's gonna make the next video.
well, giving someone good material.
Anyone else for reports of City Council? Mrs. Holland.
I would just like to take this moment to wish Mr. Mayor happy birthday.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Happy
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. It's hard being 38.
29 again.
Mr. Smith. Thank you, Ms. Holland. I know.
Make sure you give your couple officers a thank you for last night. They were stopping quite frequently, passing out candy to the kids, and really engaging. Officer Gibbs, I think, is one that I thought was a good one. I don't know the other one, but they were really active in our community doing that. It was really nice to see.
All right. Seeing no one else, moving on to public safety reports. Mrs. Graham.
All righty, we did have our meeting this afternoon. And the, oh, that is, sorry.
Thanks, Dave.
Chief Keller provided an update on personnel and potential candidates. She said the department has conducted recent interviews and they have 4 qualified candidates. 1 applicant has completed the background process and is waiting separation from the U.S. Army. 3 other candidates will be moving into the background phase of the hiring process. Chief also explained some of the process improvements requests he has before the Civil Service Commission. Today we were also visited by the mayor at our meeting, and he just discussed improvements within the city and the existing department, suggesting a second member of the PD's command staff. Research for additional positions was suggested by the Public Safety Committee, and our next meeting is December the 6th, I believe.
All right, questions for Mrs. Graham? Seeing none, moving on to public works.
We had our meeting tonight at 5 o'clock, and we talked about the budget. And I just wanted to let you know that the grant hours that we went over are included in the budget amount, but I will defer to Mrs. Coleman for the rest. So.
Okay, Ms. Coleman.
I would like to present that when we do our budget presentation. I'll present the grants and I'll present what we budgeted for expenditures and revenue.
Okay. Okay, sounds good. Is that it, Mrs. Graham?
Yes,
okay,
that is
perfect.
it.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to Chamber of Commerce, Mrs. Graham.
Yes, the visitor center is open still 7 days a week, 9 to 4. We are would like to invite you to our Chamber Christmas after hours on December the 2nd up at the golf course, starting at around 5 o'clock. We will have mystery boxes and our special Christmas tree available, and a few live auction and silent auction items. So if anybody has little gifts or something they like sitting around, if they'd like to donate for our mystery boxes, we would appreciate that. I have about 16 of them sitting at home at my house right at the moment, so we would like to have some more. We had a lot of fun last year, and we have some different ideas of how this event will progress along. So in for an exciting time. So the council members would please join us. We would like to have that.
All right.
What day was that?
December the 2nd. It's a Thursday evening.
At what time?
5 to 7 or 5 to whenever we get done, probably usually around 9.
Golf course.
It'll be a social hour. And then I would like to, on behalf of the chamber, I'd like to thank all our Denise Miller, our executive director, and Carly Gordak had a lot to do with also with the and the city with the Halloween trick-or-treating Friday night. I've seen lots of pictures and videos and everything. It looked like everybody was having a good time and a good turnout. So thank you everybody who donated their time and effort, especially our downtown businesses, and there were other businesses around the community that supported the event that night. So thank you from the chamber. And Columbia Bank was awarded our best dressed and best decorated business this year. So.
I didn't realize there was a competition.
Well,
Nor did Miss Coleman, because I'm looking at her and we're both eyeing each other saying, hold on a second.
I'm sorry. You guys, you need to,
True. You did have I was witness to that. And is there a runner up?
Yeah.
Or some sort of a trophy?
yeah, there isn't this year. I'm sorry. Well, we'll be better prepared next week and make sure that everybody is informed properly of what to wear and where to be.
Is there going to be a Christmas, I know there was a Christmas competition or a holiday, I called it Christmas, sorry if I offended anyone. Thank you. Is there a plan for some kind of a competition?
It was discussed, and I don't know if there's any specific dates are set up yet or anything, so we will get that decided and let you know for sure.
Thank you so much. I will say that there is a plaque inside City Hall for first place for the city decorations a few years back. I would like
there was some dead
a second one to go with it, please.
Yeah.
I would like a repeat. Yes.
Oh, and we still are having our lunch at 12 o'clock on Tuesday at Casa Tapatia, so
Awesome.
please come and join us.
All right. Thank you very much. Cowlitz Waukegan Council of Government. Oh, well, time is up. Mrs. Graham.
One more thing. Online at the chamber website also are applications for citizen, business, and employee of the year. Please feel free to think about those and get some entries in for us, and let us honor some of our people in town this year. And those will be announced at our annual banquet, the 29th of January.
All right. Thank you. Mrs. Graham, oh, sorry, Mrs. Rounds.
I was in Idaho.
Oh, that's right, with the baby. Mr. Boyce.
Yes, so I attended board meeting and executive board meeting. A lot of discussion about the budget, health benefits for their employees.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Coleman, anything for DWR at this time?
No, but I do want to share that we worked with the new lodge. We're talking about Winter Fest.
Oh, yes.
We did it last year. We will be having Winter Fest this year in combination with the Moose Lodge on December 4th, where we have our Christmas tree lighting ceremony. So that's coming up literally almost, 30 days away.
Wow.
So
Okay.
you want to plan for that. That's going to be a good one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mrs. Graham.
Requesting our Miss Woodland and everything at that, because we have our planners day president here tonight, so
Okay.
keep her informed.
Yeah. We already know.
Yeah.
Okay. December 4th. Got it. Thank you. Moving on to reports of city officers. I need to facilitate a conversation this evening. As you're aware, during the budget process, there are funds allocated through the lodging tax fund, and we do have a board of folks that are on your consent items this evening. But last year, I believe Mr. Plaza sat on that board, volunteered for that board to allocate those funds or make the recommendation to allocate those funds. And we are looking for another volunteer from council or a nomination perhaps to send someone to that meeting. The time commitment is 2 meetings tops at this time, perhaps only one.
I could go if no one else wants to.
I move to nominate Carol Rounds.
Oh, and there it was. And done. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The ayes have it. Congratulations, Mrs. Rounds. You are now on the LTAC committee. What I told you during the meeting today, that's how it was going to go. Somebody was going to just throw it down. Are you okay with that, Mrs. Rounds? Okay. Once the other assignments, they'll make a meeting that's usually at 4 o'clock. It'll last a couple hours. Usually it's 1, sometimes 2 meetings.
How will I know when the meeting?
We will, Mrs. Anderson or somebody will get a hold of you.
Okay.
Right, when it's time.
Okay.
I don't know who runs that meeting.
Thank you for your willingness to volunteer.
With Mr. Boyce runs that meeting.
Okay.
Okay. And it will be here. Thank you.
And
Yeah.
We were just discussing whether or not there might be a conflict.
Oh.
Councilmember Rounds on the Chamber of Commerce.
no, I do not. No.
And well,
Um,
put me as an alternate. because
Yes.
She
Okay.
is what's going on with.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay, and Mr. Chapman will be the alternate if Mrs. Rounds is unable to make it.
She can't make it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for doing that. I appreciate that. Mr. Plaza was very vocal. Very quick to make a second. Trick or treat in downtown. Thank you to everyone who helped participate and put that on. Ms. Coleman, City Hall, the employees out there, we were out there passing out a ton of candy.
A lot of positive feedback from the community. They were very happy that the road was shut down again and we weren't sectioned to a sidewalk. They felt like the safety was much better this year than it was last year, and happy to see everybody out and about in the community. So, and it was a beautiful, cool fall afternoon, so that was nice too. I'd like to direct your attention to action item G this evening. I believe we had one speaker this evening on action item G, which was the purchase and sale agreement for 236 Davidson Avenue. As our speaker this evening, our community member had stated, we have gone through a number of options over the years. And as everyone recalls, City Hall was a temporary location. I think they call it the City Hall Annex. And I'd like to eventually get away from the word annex and just call it City Hall. This is the most economic movement forward, I believe, for us. When we look at different locations and property we already own, we're talking into the millions to create a new facility. Mr. Goddard and Ms. Coleman also did some research on some other areas, and we've really tried to, or not throughout the state, we've really tried to be mindful and do what's best moving forward with our expansion, and to get everyone under one roof. And there's I think it was Union Gap was the last project that looked like that would be something that would benefit the city, and that was almost a $7 million price tag for Union Gap. Although nobody wants to spend money, but we do need room for expansion. So I encourage council to discuss this and pass this and allow us to move forward to keep everyone under one roof, which we are under one roof, but make it more comfortable for us. So also sessions coming up. Yes, Mrs. Rounds.
Can I come in on that?
Yes, absolutely.
I'm really pleased with the thought of the purchase also to keep it downtown, because it will help keep the downtown vibrant, and I think that'll bring more business in eventually.
Thank you. And that's always been a topic of conversation as well from some community members, is please don't pull City Hall out of downtown because it's going to kill our business.
Right.
People stop here because they're down paying their water bill or what have you. Thank you. Sessions coming up, and I'm working on a list for our legislators. So I'll be bringing that forward to you hopefully by the end of November, so we can have discussions about that and through December, so it's ready to go by January. Got a couple of things on the hook there, and I think need to be discussed, with public disclosure being one of them, and no longer being free. But we'll see what we can do about that. Anyway, Mr. Boyce.
Couple of things. First off, we have another vacancy on the planning commission. So if anyone knows anyone who might be interested, we'll have an application online and we'll start with City Hall.
And it should be noted they're leaving due to the fact that they're relocating residents and they're leaving the city limits, or they would continue to serve.
I also wanted to mention action item D, ordinance 1492, concerning property tax. If you remember back when we asked voters for permission to annex the city into the fire district, we talked about making it as cost neutral as possible for the citizens. So in looking at the calculation, so small for to see. So we're decreasing the property tax the city's taking in by 1.4 million. So that's a significant decrease. The police levy lift money is part of the remaining allocation. But we're going to be more reliant on sales tax and public utility tax going forward, especially the general fund. The danger of that is sales tax fluctuates more than property tax does. But we decided going forward on the annexation that we would make this reduction. So we are also reducing the contract amount in that same dollar amount. So the expenses are going down by 1.4 million and the revenue is going down by 1.4 million. So just want to make city council aware of what's going on, because that's a little different than
Mr. Frederick, do you have a question?
Mr. Boyce, I don't understand, going through that, I don't understand, scroll down where it says 2022 actual levy rate is 0.
Well,
That's
and
not,
that's just a placeholder because we're talking estimates at this point because the counties haven't certified yet.
okay,
They'll certify the tax rates on November 8th. I think that's the date. So we're leaving that 0 until we get that actual amount. If you look below in the gray area,
yeah,
that would be the new amount. So
the 0.8476, is that prior to the 1%
so
increase?
So what I did, I calculated the 1% decrease in, and then I deducted the 1.4 million from that 1% increase with new construction.
Okay. So what was the point, what was it before the 1%? Was it like, if I could do the math, before the 8.476, what was it before the 1%? I guess it'd be 0.08478 off of there,
Yeah,
right?
I should have brought that.
That's
up.
okay.
I don't have it in front of me, but-
That's okay. The second reading on this is going to occur at the next meeting.
Correct.
Will that all be updated by then?
Yes, we should have the final figures from the counties, the Clark and Calix, and we'll have those figures.
And this is to continue this through the process, because this is something we're going to have to act on. So there will be a second reading to this.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
All right, that's all I have.
That's all? Okay. Questions for Mr. Boyce? Okay. Going down to department reports. Mr. Randolph. Okay. Mr. Boyce. Or you just gave yours. Are we doing departments report? I'm kind of confused right now. Are we just doing presentations this evening? Yeah. Mr. Goddard, do you have anything? Okay, go ahead.
So the final clerk position has been filled, and that's Russell starting next Monday, so November 8th. So the clerk's office will be back to the staff at that point. Perfect. Permit activity on the land use side of the house is up over last year, so we're seeing an increase of land development proposals. Which means next year we'll probably see a bounce in our building permit application. Building activity this year is down a bit, primarily due to commercial. We had a large amount of commercial construction last year, and so we haven't seen a lot of commercial move in new building permits. But we have seen an increase in industrial building permits, so that side is continuing to grow. Our traffic growth up to the first 3 quarters of this year has been minimal. So a copy of that on my standard trip report between the quarterly report. As Pete mentioned, we have a new vacancy on the planning commission. We also, Melissa Johnston left the city of Woodland for the work for Troutdale of Wyndham. So we are advertising that position this Friday, and so far we've got 3 candidates. But I've also found out that Calix County currently, I guess, has 3 planning positions open, and the COG has a position for a planner open, and I believe also has a position open. So it just seems to be the time of the year and the current market conditions that there are a lot of people applying for a lot of empty positions. We've had 3 candidates turn in their applications so far. So two of them, one of them is planning degree, one of them has GIS or computer mapping certificate, and then another one has relevant training. So all of them look like they're taking candidates. So I'm excited about that, but to replace the fact that Melissa is gone. So between Melissa being gone, that's half of our planning capacity, and then with the public records work taking so much of my time,
operating at about 40% capacity than we were last month or last year, last couple of years. So that's starting to take a toll, and some of our essential duties are starting to be affected. So we get comments about lack of return phone calls or delays in permitting. We're trying to address that. So please bear with me. I want you to know that hopefully we're hiring that to help. And the fact that we seem to have two really good smart clerks who are looking at going to the clerk's office and up front. And then COVID has been with the city a little over a month now, I think. And she is really picking up and doing stuff really fast, taking a lot of public records duty, and she's doing a great job at that. So I'm really happy with the quality of people that in the market right now. So we're working on that. So I also wanted to let you know that because of that, I'm pretty much in the office full time, and Janice, who is our permit technician, is also in the office pretty much full time. She works on a very good schedule. She comes in early because the building side of the house, the contractors, they like to get up early and start early, so they call in inspections early. So she does early morning, and then she takes every second Friday off. So between the two of us, we do our best to get coverage in there 8 hours a day. And so we're working on that. We have the website. We're making a ton of progress on the website. I think I sent an email the beta version of our website. You can poke around and see what it's going to look like. I'm really excited about this project because we've been able to draw in all of the clerks from each department, and we are doing cross-training up front, whereas before the old website was a house of cards, and we were worried about anybody getting in there and poking around and knocking it over. This new website seems like it's really intuitive and effective. So I've tried to involve all of the folks in the training up front. Once it goes live, not all of them will have the ability to get in there and access it. We will continue to have a single gatekeeper, but there's going to be a lot of duties that each of the clerks in the department will be able to do for themselves. For example, if the police chief has like a notice, public, sorry, the term slips my mind, but press release. If the chief has a press release, his clerk should be able to post that online so everyone sees it immediately without having to get permission or go and get the gatekeeper to do that. So we're going to try and figure out, make sure that all the clerks are comfortable and are able to work on their own pages within the limits without changing the content or the structure of the website. And we had set a delivery date of December 1st, and we are trying to get that delivered by October 8th. So we're going to try and get it up there.
November.
So,
November 8th.
sorry, November, what did I say?
October.
Sorry, November 8th. So, yeah. I also wanted to let you know that we have a lot of pre-apps this year, including there was discussion about what's going on downtown. So I've been working with the new owner of the post office, and he's trying to find some way to get a tenant in there and get that site open as soon as possible. And then across the street next to the city hall parking lot, we have a pre-application conference to a business, a new owner who's interested in setting up like a food cart spot. And we'd like to have a food cart and trying to get some of that afternoon, evening life returned back down to the downtown core as well. So I'm really excited because of all the projects that come in the door. I'm excited because now it seems like it's starting to get back to downtown. So hopefully that'll be pretty quick.
Good.
And that's it for my report.
Questions for Mr. Goddard? Mrs. Holland.
So you mentioned public records requests. What our policy on time frame? What is the, or maybe Mr. Randolph knows, like, what's a good amount of time?
Reasonable.
Yeah, what's a reasonable amount of time?
So the Public Records Act requires that you respond within 5 days of the submission. And we get the public records request through our website. It goes into iCompass, and we make a point of responding to each applicant if it's possible to get them the information they're asking for within the 5 days and make the effort to do so. But we at least acknowledge and say, okay, we appreciate you submitting this request. We will work on it, but we believe it's going to take us some additional time, and we might give ourselves an additional week or so. But we lay out a specific date and time that we will respond to them, and that could be anywhere from the initial 5 days to potentially 2 weeks, before we give them either packet as much of the information as we can research in that time, or we let them know when the next delivery will be issued. So if it's a small one, we'll respond within 5 days. If it's a little more time, we'll do 2 weeks. If it's a large one, we try to deliver portions of that at least at 2 week intervals.
So in theory, if I were to do one just every day for funsies and ask for random things, you have a week. Let's say I put one in today, you have a week before I can what?
You will get a response within 5 days. You will get a response within 5 days. But for example, like we get a lot of requests from law firms or insurance companies about accident reports. And Carla and Donnie are great about responding within a day or two of them getting that request. So quite often it'll build on the initial response, it'll include a copy of the document and say, if you have any additional questions, please give us a call. So,
But like random things like, I don't know, what happened in a council meeting in 2012 at this date and what was discussed, that kind of stuff. Like, do you get a lot of that, or what do you see a lot of?
occasionally we get random questions like that, and we will actually within the 5 days contact them and say, what specifically are you looking for? We'll try to narrow it down. A lot of requests are super simple, like, can I get a copy of the building permits for this piece of property, or can I get a copy of the report for this accident from this date and this time? Those are simple. The more complex ones are, I want every text message between the mayor and citizens meeting, in which case we have to go through multiple documents and multiple things. So the question is, can we narrow it down specifically between the mayor and Bob during 2021? That's much simpler for us to do the research. Typically, if it was too open-ended for us to get our arms around it, we would ask them to narrow it, or we would say, okay, this is going to take a considerable amount of research, and we will be able to dedicate 3 hours a week for the next 6 months, and we will deliver you documents every Friday until we've managed to collect all of the information.
And we don't charge for that?
So charges under the regulations are a tricky question. If it is a record that the city currently has and that we have reason to produce it, we do not charge. So if it's a paper copy and we are in the process of scanning them and keeping the electronic copy and the paper copies over the state archives, if somebody said, oh, I want that scanned and sent to me, we don't charge them, because if they just waited long enough, it would be done for them. Whereas if it was a tape of a public hearing and they wanted a written transcript of everything that was said, we can charge them for the clerk's time to sit there and write the hearing out verbatim, word for word. Because that is an extraordinary service that we do not normally provide. Normally, we would just give them the tape, and if they really want to transfer it, they can sit and do that themselves. But if they insist on a written version, we would say, okay, we estimate it's going to take 6 hours and $88 an hour. You're going to have to give us a deposit of $500, and then if we use more than $500 worth of time, then it's more. Otherwise, we'll give you the tape and the transcript and whatever you're reading. Yes, and likewise with copying costs. So if it's available in electronic version, we might need to make special copies of large posters that would require us to print those and to store them. We would charge them for those copies, but we don't have that capacity.
Because you have nothing but that to worry about ever, huh? Yeah. Thank you.
Can I follow
Yeah, Mr. Fredericks.
up? I've had to do public records requests in the past as a sitting member of council because the administration at the time did not want me to have the information that I wanted. And so in an attempt to try to get me to not get the information, they sent me an email, which is public record. You can do a public records request on this, that said we were going to charge you for the labor up to 8 hours. It was $2,000 to $3,000 worth of an expense as a sitting member of council trying to get information. And the attempt for the information was to make an informed policy decision on behalf of the folks that I represent. And so my concern though with doing a public records request is we get a lot of public records requests in, and they are the people's documents. And I understand the law and it makes complete sense. However, having said that, given the nature of our community being smaller in size and not having a bunch of people just floating around the front office, does the council by law have the ability to say we are going to work on public records requests for a total of 8 hours a week? We're going to devote one person for one day, and we're going to limit the amount of time that the city is working. I mean, we have to respond within 5 days, but to execute on the request could take a while depending on the of when we've got them. So we're going to do them by order, by when we receive them. Do we have that ability to limit the amount of time staff is working on these requests?
You can, which create legal risks, because, I mean, the clear black letter, you have 5 days to acknowledge that's solved. But then after, what you have to do is you have to prove that your response was reasonable. And so what that would mean is if it was a day that was reasonable, if it's 2 weeks, and then also it's a factor start coming in. But if you get challenged on that, you've got to be able to make that presentation to the judge, and the judge not to tell it or shake his head or her head and say, no, you can't do that. So if you set up sort of like, all we're going to do is 8 hours, which I understand that for a minute, like it makes perfect sense, that could cost you in terms of, well, you know, this person was available, we could have done this, or that person was out, whatever. Then the city would have to be reasonable in its response, and then you start getting fined per document, et cetera, which can get really expensive. I mean, a lot of times, and people that will deliberately abuse the system and retaliation have gotten hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines collected. It's nature of the beast.
Yeah.
And the city doesn't have insurance coverage.
Right.
And those fines are also per document per day, isn't that right? Yeah.
So if you're not reasonable, then that just increases the cost.
So if I have an axe to grind, or if I just want to sit at home and I got nothing else going on and do public records requests all day, I can do that, right?
There are people that do that.
Yeah. Okay. It's unfortunate that that happens, because there is there's a lot of legitimacy out there for public records and to be able to access them, and it's unfortunate that what I have seen, it's apparent that some of these requests are in my opinion, questionable.
And that's the hard part, there are also things that people try to hide the ball, which is clearly wrong.
Right.
But it really is, it's set up where if someone really wants to make life difficult for the government entity.
Yep.
There's putting them.
Yep.
Well, part of the problem, in my opinion, with that too, is when you've got somebody who's intentionally abusing the system, it's making it harder for citizens who have legitimate reasons to want these documents to get their hands on them. So they're not screwing the city, they're screwing the people in the city.
I agree, but I have not been able to, I have been doing this for a long time, and I have not found any mechanism to get the person, even if it's obvious that it's a vendetta, I don't know any mechanism that you can legally do.
Oh, no, I'm not saying that there's anything you could have done. I'm just saying that it's just something that you would think that people would take into consideration when they, just get a feather in their cap, that they would take the time to realize how it's hurting their fellow citizens more than it is the city.
The joke is that the Public Records Act applies to the legislature to the courts.
I think, I think the part maybe people don't get is the amount of taxpayer dollars that are spent. I mean, we have some pretty well-employed people in our city hall spending their time on that kind of stuff. Like, I literally, in all the years I ever looked up anything from anything to do with the city, I figured it out myself. I never once did a public records request because Google's a thing and everything's archived, and state archives are amazing. I think I'm up to 2012 on city council meetings. So that's, I mean, I literally read everything ever and never needed to ask a clerk to go fetch it for me because I'm perfectly capable of finding it. But anyway, that's just me. I just wouldn't waste taxpayer dollars to do that.
And at the same time, you have legal costs as well. And I haven't given some drives like 3,000 emails on it. And I need to go through there and find out because some are going to be exempt. And then those have to be pulled out. You have to prepare an exemption log. And then likewise, there are some that you have to do a redaction. If you do a redaction log. And so if there's like 2,000, 2,500 emails, I could be spending 10 hours going through, looking at everything, printing stuff, and et cetera. So it's a burden.
So it's really not a free service.
Nothing is ever free.
No, not for us anyway.
And the taxpayers are paying for it in one way or another.
And the law has been around 50 or 60 years. It's probably not going to change.
Right.
Anything else from Mr. Goddard? Seeing nothing else. Ms. Coleman, are you saving your report for your presentation this evening? Or do you have something in addition to?
I do have something in addition to, I wanted to share with staff that we are going through, we have gone through interviews for the public works operations superintendent position. And we are down to a couple candidates. We're going to be holding another round of interviews for those candidates. And then we also held interviews for the labor position for public works, and we'll be hiring 2 laborers. I did want to share with you that, and this is just FYI, that out of those applicants, we had a number of applicants who felt were qualified to interview, also applied for the position in Battleground. Battleground has 3 openings right now. 1 in their sewer and 2 in their drainage. And I want to share with you that their low range entry salary and our mid-range salary. So what we hire in at mid-range and what they hire in at entry range, we are $700 lower than their low range at our mid-range. So the applicants that we interviewed have shared with us, even though we said you're the qualified applicant, we choose you, and we offered you the job today, would you take the position? And all the applicants who are interviewing for that have said no. I'm waiting to hear what I get from them. So we are in a hold pattern because I'm sure that some of the applicants that we did interview also worked for Battleground and had letters of reference from Battleground. So I'm sharing with you that, even though we had a great candidate pool, those candidates are also applying at other municipalities and that are offering $4. So I did want to share that with you to make you aware that, again, our mid-range is $700 lower than their entry level. So,
I was gonna ask that same question to, Mr. Ryder there. Are we comparable when you guys are looking for, positions there, what you're saying, Kelso, Cowlitz? Are we actually comparable for?
So my philosophy is, whether it's the clerk position or the planner position, and that is, you see the organization from the bottom. You hire somebody who doesn't have a lot of experience and bring them to grow to the organization. It's a great, Melissa is a great example. She had no planning experience. It was her first planning job. And I told her the day she walked in the door, this is a small jurisdiction, you're going to learn everything, and I'm bringing you to become a planning director. That's how our profession should work. And I expected her as an entry planner, they stay at their job for 2 years, and she just got that 2 years, and by God, she got a job somewhere else, a good planning jurisdiction, and she had to support internal growth because they have openings coming up in the next few months. And I hired entry level, and I expect to bring them to grow. And when you're right out of college and it's your first professional job, you would accept anything. So it doesn't bother me, but Tracy has new certifications and specialties.
well, so the difference is that this is entry level. This is the bottom entry that you can go. It's a laborer position. It's shovel in the hand. So if you have gardening experience, I mean, that's what you're interviewing for, right? We did have a few with a little bit more experience than that. Thanks for the word for that. But I will share that everything that we do, we're paying a lot of dollars to train for confined space entry, for forklift, for CPR first aid, for a certification in pesticide, for water distribution, to get shots, to work in sewer, all these things you pay for on these entry levels. The last thing you want to do is pay for all of that, and then another position becomes open, and now you just paid for all this additional education, and now I'm going to go over here for an additional $1,000 a month, because again, that's the bottom entry level. Now they have experience, so that's $12,000 a year. So I just want to share that with you. I'm not, and it's not a negative towards Woodland. I just want to let you know what we're competing against when I'm interviewing for these applicants.
Mr. Fredericks?
Ms. Coleman, you've identified the problem. What's your suggested solution, and what can the council do to fix it so you're in a better position to attract and maybe retain these candidates? I'm not sure. I was under the impression that these were collective bargaining jobs.
So Pete can probably touch on that too, and probably Travis as well, but one of the items that we can do is there's a salary grid, and that salary grid can adjust, and I'm not sure when it was adjusted last time. I do know for one position that I'm aware of, it was not adjusted, it hasn't been adjusted. And when I say adjusted, I'm talking the grid, we have step level 1 through 5. When I say adjusted, I'm saying that salary grid level adjust, maybe the 3 becomes 1 now. But I know one in particular position that hadn't been adjusted since 2009.
So we do negotiate annual COLAs.
I'm not talking about COLA at all.
I'm not talking about COLAs either, because that's great, that's 3-4%.
Part of the bargaining, they come with their comps, we come with our comps, and hopefully you end up somewhere in the middle.
Right.
Both sides.
So is the city actively in a situation today where we're going to lose candidates because we have a pay schedule or step plan that is broken? And how can we fix it? And how can we fix it quickly? We're not in an environment where we can just sit around and wait for the wheels of government to turn, which in this case could be months, to fix it. What can be done?
We're actively bargaining
Okay.
the contract, so it's open. start at the end of the year. So we're talking with them right now, we're meeting with them at the end of November. But, you know, it's hard for a jurisdiction of our size to create the battleground with the different space,
Yeah.
population. And, you know, in 2016, when we were looking at exempt employees, we split it into two and weighted the different areas. Jurisdictions in your neighborhood, you know, like battlegrounds, jurisdictions of like tax base across the state.
Right.
You know, it's difficult when we're sitting here next to Vancouver,
Right.
battleground, Birchfield, you know, Longview. It's really hard.
Yeah. And I think I really think that at the end of the day, that is the challenge for the city of Woodland is the tax base problem that we have is that we're not generating enough revenue to meet what someone could get driving 11 miles up the road.
Or that lives in that neighborhood.
Right.
Wouldn't want to drive 11 miles.
Sure.
down the road for 700 bucks.
Yeah, it makes it very difficult for you to be a hiring manager during this time.
It does, but I will tell you, we have a great candidate pool, but when you have other, and it's good when there's no other positions that are open, because you can grab all these great candidates, you know,
Right.
experience, but once you have other municipalities start to open those positions, then you have a challenge.
Yeah.
Mr. Smith?
I guess that there are opportunities to sign on bonuses if they'll take it. When it comes to the collective agreements that we've made, from my understanding, that's the minimum pay. You can always pay more as long as you're meeting the minimum in the contract. Exactly. So if it means increasing to retain, I think that's something we can address. Sounds easier to me, but.
Well, but at the same time, you know, I apologize, Mr. Boyd, but I didn't tell you that I was going to bring this up because we are negotiating. But when I'm looking at items, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe, because I called Battleground today and I discussed some options of Battleground. I didn't have collectively bargain with them, but I'm just saying I just wanted to call and see what their interviews were when it was offering position. So I knew what I could do with my client. But anyway, it's hard, as I was going over the budget tonight with the Public Works Committee, I was sharing our shortages and our shortages in streets. That, you know, just in order to have matching funds for grants, we're short about $500,000 if I received 3 grants that I applied for out of our revenue side of our streets. Now, mind you, we have not started bringing in the revenue for our stormwater yet. I will share that, we know that. But when you're short in your revenue side, there's really no way to increase that expenditure side. So that's the challenge that we have. So I don't have an answer for you. That the great answer would be we have unlimited funds and resources and just raise the rates. Or raise the salaries, but we don't have that option because we don't have the revenue.
Mr. Cotter?
Given my earlier comment, there's a great opportunity for me to make a joke about hiring a professional video that tracks Battleground.
I could or not.
That's the budget.
I may be able to get some free services.
I may have some free time after the first of the year.
Now we may know who made the video about you.
Yes.
See you, Battleground Public Works.
Nailed it. Any other questions for Ms. Coleman? Seeing none, Chief Kelly.
The public safety report was pretty much my update to the department.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Any questions for the Chief tonight? Again, thank you for sending the troops out last night. That was, and on Friday for trick or treat. It was very well received by a lot of folks. So please pass on our appreciation. it's awesome to see that they can engage with our community in a positive way, knowing that there's such heartache now over law enforcement. And if folks could see that engagement, maybe they would change their minds. Moving on to consent items.
I make a motion to approve the consent item.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Round, second by Councilmember Chapman. Mrs. Anderson.
Councilmember Chapman?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Councilmember Brown?
Aye.
Councilmember Graham?
Aye.
Councilmember Holland?
Aye.
Councilmember Plaza?
Aye.
Councilmember Fred?
Aye.
The consent items have passed. Moving on to action item D, ordinance number 1492, fixing the amount to be provided by ad valorem taxes. Did I say that right? I think I always have a problem with that word. What was it? Valorem taxes upon the property in the city of Woodland in 2022 and approving an ordinance summary for publication, first reading.
Move adoption of ordinance number 1492, first reading.
I'll second it.
Moved by Councilmember Fredericks, seconded by Councilmember Rounds. Councilmember Fredericks.
I have no discussion.
Councilmember Rounds.
No discussion.
Further discussion. Seeing none, Mrs. Anderson, will you please take the roll on ordinance number 1492, first reading?
Aye.
Councilmember Frederick?
Aye.
Councilmember Graham?
Aye.
Councilmember Plaza?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Councilmember Brown?
Aye.
Councilmember Chapman?
Aye.
Action item has passed. Moving on to action item E, authorize mayor to sign contract with the lowest bidder, J&A Fencing, for the SMA-21-010 for fence work.
I make a motion to approve action item E, authorize mayor to sign contract with the lowest bidder, J&A Fencing, for the SMA-21-010 for fence work.
Moved by Councilmember Rounds, seconded by Councilmember Smith. Councilmember Rounds.
Well, if the lowest bidder and the work needs to be done, I say let's go for it.
Councilmember Smith.
Yeah, I agree also. It needs to be definitely done. From what, this wasn't in the budget, right? But we do have the money to do it. Is that?
So there were, a couple of the items were in the budget. We did budget for them. I put in there, it says up there, it says, one is vandalism, was not budgeted, but we do have money in our maintenance funds that we set aside for items like this, unfortunately. And then we have a hit and run. So obviously we don't budget for hit and run vandalism, but we do have money in our maintenance. We did budget for, moving the fence. We did budget for the installation of the new gate. We did not budget for another, insurance claim, but we will be fully reimbursed for that. So there's budgeted items in there, there's money in the fund for items that we're not budgeted for, and the rest of the insurance claim fully reimbursement. So we aren't asking for a budget amendment at all.
Okay.
Further discussion? Mr. Fredericks?
Thank you for clarifying that, because that was one of the questions that I had. Secondly, on item E and F, both of these are contracts to bidders. And I read the agreement, and I want to just ask this question. Years ago, the city council adopted a policy to ensure that all the contractors doing business with the city of Woodland were e-verified, that their employees, that they showed proof that they were running their employees through an e-verification system. I do not see that in either one of these agreements. Can you assure the council that when we go through this process, that these contractors are required to abide by the policy passed by a previous council regarding e-verification?
I cannot, but I will check on it,
Okay.
because I'm not on that contract side. I have password, that's something right now. We are following, and this isn't part of council docs, we are following the MRSC guidelines. I'm not sure about the e-verification. I don't know, maybe if, Gina, do you have any information on that? Okay, so I will follow up and report back to you at the next council meeting.
I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
No problem.
Further discussion? Seeing none, Mrs. Anderson, please take the roll on action item E, authorize mayor to sign contract with the lowest bidder, J&A Fencing.
Aye.
Councilmember Graham?
Aye.
Councilmember Frederick?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Chapman.
Aye.
Councilmember Collins.
Aye.
Councilmember Plaza.
Aye.
Action item E has passed. Moving on to action item F, authorize mayor to sign contract with lowest bidder H2O Solutions LLC for the SMA-21-002B Reservoir Number 3 cleaning.
I make a motion to approve action item F, authorize mayor to sign contract with the lowest bidder, H2O Solutions LLC for the SMA-21-002B Reservoir Number 3 cleaning.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Rounds, second by Councilmember Smith. Councilmember Rounds.
Again, it's lowest bidder, it needs to be done, but I do agree with Mr. Fredericks that we would like to see in the future to make sure that they are E-verified, that the employees are legit, so.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
Same question, is it budgeted or you're finding budgeted as the maintenance project?
Yeah, it absolutely is budgeted, yes. I was going to share with you too that I believe that through the state, through Department of Labor and Industries, and there's somebody else that we have to, when they bond and they have to turn in their paperwork, it seems to me, if I remember correctly, there was something in there in regards to that e-verification. So it might have switched where we don't do that verification anymore, but it's done through at the state level of the paperwork that we receive back to release our page. So I'll follow up on that, but I'm thinking that's where that comes from.
Further discussion? Seeing none, Mrs. Anderson, action item F, authorize mayor to sign contract with the lowest bidder H2O Solutions LLC.
Aye.
Councilmember Plaza.
Aye.
Councilmember Collins.
Aye.
Councilmember Graham.
Aye.
Councilmember Frederick.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Rounds.
Aye.
Action item F has passed. Moving on to action item G, authorize mayor to sign purchase and sale agreement for purchase of 236 Davidson Avenue, Woodland, Washington.
Move to approve action item G.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Plaza, second by Councilmember Rounds. Councilmember Plaza.
Okay, yeah, even though I know that, spending money isn't the hot item ticket these days, and a lot of people just don't get it. Purchasing a building that is large enough to facilitate the growth that the city's going to have in the future, which means that the city employee numbers are going to grow. And considering the size that City Hall is right now, it's just not going to cut having more employees in there. So I think it's smart and a good idea to purchase a building that will hold more employees and allow the current employees that we have to work more efficiently. It's just smart thinking. And I think it would be a good investment of the city's money.
Mrs. Rounds.
I agree with Mr. Plaza, and like I said earlier, I'm tickled to see that it's staying in the downtown area to help improve that, the business community down there. And the location that it's at is going to be a lot less expensive to bring everybody together. So I just think it's a great idea. So.
Thank you. Further discussion? Mr. Fredericks?
I don't disagree with anything that Councilmember Plaza or Councilmember Rounds indicated, but I do have a fiduciary responsibility to understand how this is going to be paid for. And all I have is one sentence in here that the city will incur debt to cover the purchase. Public work funds will be used to retire the debt. I have no details as to specifically how this transaction is going to be paid for, and I need to have that understanding, and it's not included in the document.
So, Mr. Woods is going to speak on that, because we talked about this, it would be brought up, and he said we would discuss that.
All right, so with, if the city council votes to execute this agreement, we would engage with D.A. Davidson, our financial consultant. The deal is predicated that city council set up terms of financing. So basically what we're talking about doing is leasing the space for public works. So it's going to be paid for from public works funds. So We're looking at shopping around to various banks, similar to what we did for the fire station. And the proceeds will be paid for mostly from water and sewer, but also streets and the other public works funds. There's so if council doesn't think the rates are adequate or doesn't have a financing package and someone would purchase it.
So we're gonna find out, we will find this out at the final approval of the sale, which will come through the council, and at that time, there will be a specific, here's specifically how we're going to pay for it.
Specific package.
This is to move forward.
Amortization schedules.
All we're doing here is moving forward, and yes, we're either yes or no, we're in supportive of or not supportive of moving this forward. And we will be provided that information later. Got it. Okay, I figured that was the case, but I didn't see the details of what I would have expected to see here at this stage, but that's okay. I can be patient.
Further? Seeing none, exemption, please take the roll on action item G, authorize mayor to sign purchase and sale agreement to purchase of 236 Davidson Avenue, Woodland, Washington.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Action item G has passed. The time is now 8:12. We'll take a 7-minute recess and come back to the workshop at 8:20.
This conference will now be recorded.
All right, it's 8:21. We're back in session. Oh, here they, oh, found them. She was quick to the, I more than, oh, where's the stuff? You were up here. One thing I forgot to mention during my report was that last Friday night I had attended the Love Street Playhouse opening night up in Longview, Shadowlands, which has been the first production for Love Street Playhouse since COVID started, right? I think they were in the middle of production right before they opened. And it was wonderful to see everybody back at it again, and they were at a larger venue, so everybody was spread out and not together. So if you do get an opportunity to travel up there, the theater is beautiful. The production is beautiful. They did a wonderful job, and I'm just so happy and thrilled that they're back at it again. So congratulations to them, and encourage everyone to go and see the show.
Where was that, Columbia Theater?
Columbia Theater, yeah. I'd never been in there before. It was absolutely gorgeous.
Isn't it pretty?
Yes, it was very nice, very nice. And with that, the time is now 8:22. We're going to go into the 2022 budget workshop. Oh, wait, we're clapping. Sorry, Mr. Boyce. We're all so excited. Mr. Boyce. Oh, I know.
So the final budget isn't complete yet, but we wanted to start the discussion with department directors talking about what they're looking for in this 2022 budget on the expenditure side of things. So we'll have each department director talk about what they put together, what they're looking for, and go into discussion that way. Hopefully by this coming Monday, the budget workshop is scheduled. Hopefully we'll have everything in place and be ready to go with the complete package. The story pages we have, you notice you probably need a high-powered.
Yeah.
I got one. I'll try to blow them up on the screen as best I can. So hopefully we'll have it looking pretty by next week, and
It should be noted that this is still a contrary to what people are talking about. This is still a software issue that we're struggling with. Mr. Boyce was on the phone with them yet again today, trying to get things worked out.
Well, part of the issue right now is my lack of training with the reports, but so I can't put that on them. That's
Okay.
on me, but yeah. So anyway, we're getting it together. It did cause a delay. I apologize for that, but hopefully we'll, the numbers are looking fairly good. So I hope once it's all before you, if there's questions and suggestions and.
Before we continue, may I ask a question?
Mr. Fredericks, yes.
So the executive branch of government is required to provide to the city council by a certain date through RCW a preliminary budget. In previous years, there have been a few times when that deadline has been missed. And I have raised issue in the past with it not being in a timely manner, not by this administration, but by previous administration. And I was told 2 words, sue me. And so is it up to the legislative body to bring suit to the executive branch of government over this matter, or is this something that the citizens of Woodland should not be worried about, given the fact that we have 60 days to go through this budget, to get our questions answered and asked, and be able to pass a budget that is done in a timely manner, which is by January 1 of the new year?
I think we do have time. We think our weekly meeting isn't enough. Council feels like we need more discussion. We can work on that and maybe schedule a retreat on the weekend or, you know, for your Christmas Eve. Determine how frequently we'll do or how.
So, Mr. Randolph, our legal, are you familiar with anybody suing over this RCW of a budget not being provided in a timely manner to the legislative body?
Not in the local area.
And if so, it would be appropriate that it would either come from a member or members of the council or an individual citizen if they wanted to sue. Is that where you bring this case to what, Cowlitz County Superior Court because a deadline hasn't been met? I'm just trying to understand what the process here, because it seems a little. You can sue for whatever you want. Okay. Excellent.
So, I mean, is that a significant thing that we need to discuss?
No, it's not. It's just understanding of what the process would be, because there has been some concern that we don't have a preliminary budget at this point. And I, as a member who's been here since 2008, I'm not concerned about it not being fully in front of us yet. And I understand the challenges that we have given the software that we had to have. And I'm glad we have it. Yeah. I don't know what they are. I'm not too concerned about it, enough to where I wouldn't send you the email. I just want to make sure that there's an understanding that I feel confident as a member of this body that we will get what we need in order to make an informed decision on behalf of the roughly 6,000 citizens who live in the city of Woodland.
Plus 13 this year.
I feel very confident in that from this administration that we're going to get that. So I have no doubts that we'll have what we need to be able to effectively make a decision and time to review the material and the numbers.
Thank you. Mr. Goddard, we're going to start with you this evening.
He's got his glasses on. He's ready.
Yes.
So the community development budget is relatively simple because I do not have a lot of projects for varying revenue sources. So I made some minor changes just by looking at the applications that came in this year. So I think I have about a $10,000 decrease in revenue projection, about a $4,000 decrease in spending prior to the salaries adjustments that were made for us. And a large part of my budget, both the revenue and expenditures, is from the building department. And of course, the less, because we use a contractor, the less permits that come in, the less we have to spend on the consultant to actually do the inspections. So my budget is a little more elastic in that I don't spend the full amount of allotted pass-through expenses if those permits do not come in. So I have revenue number in case, if I have expenditure numbers just in case. But on a monthly basis, when we run our reports, this year we're really low on commercial applications, building applications. It's not a big deal, but we're not paying a lot for building plan review and building inspection on the commercial side. So in that sense, my budget does not have a significant up or down on the active year. I have asked for 2 enhancements. One is the first priority was the code enforcement half-time position in restoration. Because of COVID in the previous year, this position was cut because of the union contract. Half part-time employees were forced to be positions furloughed. And the budget last year, we actually had to increase the code enforcement budget because we were using a half-time employee with limited benefits, and we backfilled with a full-time employee without benefits. So although we're actually reducing services to increase the budget, whereas this year the idea is that we would again go out and look for a half-time code enforcement officer, and that would return to a budget half-time position with limited benefits. So the code enforcement budget may actually just go down next year if we replace that position. But of course, our clerk will be back on the building permit and the planning side. So it will come out of funded revenue that's already in the development budget. Hopefully that makes sense. Questions about that? And then the second enhancement that I've requested is not actually for the code enforcement, or I'm sorry, not actually for the community development department. My second request is for a new clerk 2 position for the clerk treasurer's office, given that one of my responsibilities now is the customer service aspect of the clerk treasurer's office up front in the city hall, and also the public records effort. And so given the amount of time that it's taken from my central duties to do public records and the additional public records issues that have been raised, and the fact that a lot of our experienced clerk staff has been replaced, my recommendation is that we add an additional clerk 2 position, or that we consider an additional clerk 2 position for essentially a public records clerk. And that would come out of the general fund for the clerk treasurer's office. So it would not be any revenue associated with that position. But if you have questions,
Actually, I've included that in the clerk treasurer's budget. So there's an additional clerk that's dedicated to public records requests, document retention.
That would be shared with the police department as well. Is that, I mean, eventually.
Well, there's some discussion about body cams, and we really don't know what the amount of requests are going to be for video footage, and sometimes you have to redact faces and things like that. This position definitely could help with that.
Mr. Fredericks?
So if I'm reading this correctly, the difference between the 2022 proposed budget and the 2021 budget is your 2022 base budget increase or decrease?
The 20,000.
Okay. I hate to do this because I recognize this might be an additional challenge for you, but is there any way to get this information on what we've spent on these specific budget items through the month of October? And the purpose for that is I always have a little bit of a challenge when let's say you budgeted 50,000 for 21, you've spent 12 and you need 65 for next year. So what I like to see is I like for you to tell me, well, tell me a little bit more about why you feel like you need $15,000 more when you haven't spent what the council has already allocated for you to spend that year. Is it possible to have that line, Adam, so we could see the,
I think we can incorporate it into the report. If it becomes troublesome, we can run a separate report with that. I think I can get it in the report.
it would be helpful for me, only to just help me try to understand what we're doing and why.
And this year in department's due because I am keeping track of my hours that I'm working on public records requests. And those come out of the treasurer's budget, not necessarily the community development.
Okay,
So it's a little bit of work this year for a couple of reasons. Also, that 20,000, I think it reflects about $10,000 in revenue, less revenue that I project for last year. Next year, because of changes in permitting. So it looks like 20% or $20,000 increase. But we're earning less.
right, and I understand for your department, there's pass-through expenses and things like that, so I don't really spend too much time on your budget.
Okay.
Truth be told, at least that's just me. Some people might dig into those fine details. I understand that, and so even if we can get September, which is fine, and I understand that most of the revenues we collected the second half of the property taxes. Okay,
Yeah, they just tend to be in Halloween.
Yeah. Question, anything else, Mr. Goddard, at this time? Okay. Civic questions?
I mentioned this at the end of our last meeting. And I know it sounds petty, but you destroy me with the color copies because the city is roped into a contract with this wonderful predatory photocopy company that I'm familiar with outside of this entity. And you get a bajillion black and white copies as part of your contract, but you pay for all your color copies. So when that contract comes down, it just, I know.
We'll have pretty colored ones for video and then
Black and white. Oh, and it also, these, I can't click the hyperlink, so there's no reason these need to be in color, the agendas. And it sounds petty, but I'm not kidding when I say that I am familiar with $500 a month photocopy bills because people like to print in color, and 5 cents a color copy times a bajillion different departments. But I know it sounds petty, I do, but it just kills me. It's in me to penny pinch, and 5 cents is times that, I'm sorry. But
I would prefer color copies with charts and graphs, please.
but only charts and
Mrs. Holland just fell out of her chair and passed out.
those it makes sense, but when it's like pretty pictures, like, I know they're pretty, but.
We will be more mindful of necessity versus
Well, and in the paper,
paper.
like, y'all single-handedly keep Boise Cascade in business, so.
Yes. Okay, Mr. Goddard?
So I'm sorry, this is not reflected in the document, but in our manager's meeting this morning, there was a discussion about the value added and the amount of services that were provided by an additional clerk position for the clerk treasurer's office, like I've requested. And the thing that was pointed out in that is our existing clerk job descriptions included a web clerk 3, and then also we have the utility clerk 4, who does utility clerk. And with the new website and the simplification of that and cross training, that it will become more of a clerk 2 duty than a clerk 3 duty. And with mine all, we're going to be doing our utility billing. There is still a significant change in the workload that is going to occur in the clerk treasurer's office. And the question is, if mine all in fact does free up an additional clerk position or a large portion of that clerk duty, and you add an additional clerk full-time position that I've requested, the question is, will there be enough additional work for potentially in the long run, is there going to be enough additional work for that employee? And the conversation kind of circled around that discussion. And the question was, if we brought on a full-time code enforcement officer, we morph that position into a code enforcement inspector position, that code enforcement or that inspector position could do public works inspections and keep track of ongoing construction projects and be able to provide services for the public works department, both water, sewer, road, and stormwater, and also be able to work with the police department so that the officers would have an additional person to help them with their parking questions or signage questions, that this inspector who's out on the road majority of the day would be able to provide additional support. Would that represent extra value added to the community rather than hiring a clerk who's dedicated for public records? And we might be able to cover that additional workload once mine all takes effect. And we've got the 2 staff members on and we can fully train and our website is more efficient and our utility payments come in mine all instead of more customers at the counter. And so this was an interesting debate, but unfortunately we didn't have it this morning, so it's not reflected in the proposal that we're talking about. So for me, that would take all this energy, and I think we'd like to hear additional information on it, so we know whether or not that's the direction we'd like us to go.
Mr. Fredericks.
Mr. Goddard, a couple of things. As far as the financing for this position, is it 100% general fund, or can any of this position be
Which one?
In any of the, I'm sorry.
Which position?
Thank you. The clerk 2 that would help with and assist with the public records request, or in this case, if you brought someone in to do code enforcement / public works or public records requests, kind of like an individual that would be able to wear, I can do code enforcement, I can do public records requests. Is there a way to divide up that salary and those benefits so it does not impact entirely all to the general fund, much like we do with the city administrator?
So an inspector position, you would be able to balance that based on workload. So some of it would be code enforcement, which would ultimately be part building, part planning, part general fund. And it's a little bit of road, a little bit of water, a little bit of sewer, maybe a little bit of police department, depends on the workload towards that. The report would strictly be a general fund, which basically means you would either need to look at increasing taxes or another revenue stream or by cutting services elsewhere. My low-hanging fruit is at this point at the parks department, because parks is an essential function required by law. So you could cut those, you could cut the clerk's office, but that other clerk's position higher for 2, that doesn't work, so we have to find somewhere else to find savings in another general fund.
So for me, I think the one thing that I'm challenged with is with mine all coming on. I hate to move forward with hiring an additional person with the understanding that we may be freeing up a position. And now I've got myself in a situation where I have a person that I've just hired, and oh, by the way, now we've opened up this free spot, and now I've got one person who's free after I just hired. To me, I struggle with that a little bit as far as the timing. I definitely think it would be appropriate to discuss in April or May, once we go through that process and have a better understanding. But also, I think I'd like to have an understanding of, from a public records request, how many are we getting? What's the nature? What time are we spending on it on a weekly basis? And what future time do we anticipate that we're going to spend just to get through the backlog of what we have? And understand, what are we looking at specifically? And that could be just additional information provided to the clerk treasurer, whatever these are. And that's what I would like to see, to just help me have a little bit more information before moving forward. But as I look at it today, I'm a little concerned that I'm hiring someone and now I'm creating a situation where I have someone who's got extra time that could do that work.
Yeah.
So from a timing perspective, I'd be a little concerned with moving forward with that.
So I have added a section to the community development quarterly report that analysis, fiscal analysis, and a lot of people make fun of me for all my statistics and geeking out. But there is an analysis in there, an estimate of the amount of time that is being spent, because I keep track of that on my time sheet. And the number, and the change of public records requests that we are getting.
I recall seeing that in there. Is it possible that you could just resend that portion to me of your report? I recall seeing it in there, but I don't.
Sure, I have a paper copy of it, which you can take with you today, but it's also attached.
Yeah, it was in my agenda packet, and I recall going through it, but I don't have it, that section.
So I started that last quarter when I took over the duty, and I will update that.
Okay.
Additional questions for Mr. Goddard at this time? All right, thank you, Mr. Goddard. Chief Kelly.
Well, the council is aware of my budget is pretty much expenditures. Significant increases are salary and benefits package. Notice the adjustments on for 2022, you see a lot of zeros. A whole lot of money that we had to spend moving forward, so I left the budget the same, for the expenditure the same. The of significant note is the city no longer incurs the expense for Shop with a Cop, as the Shop with a Cop program is moved this year to a 501c3 entity. So we have that, we have that all in house. Actually, was honored of that along with Sergeant Kelly and the police. Those are all donations and the money coming from other areas, including the city and outside the city. The only enhancement that I've looked for this year, I think I have everything budgeted for some of the improvements that we want to make. But the only enhancement that I would ask for is mainly technology. The technology enhancements, and unfortunately, they're not part of your package. But we have some challenges with our MDCs, the mobile data terminals that we use inside the car. Some of the old operating system, the old Windows operating system is a little antiquated, and we need to improve the current operating system, Windows 10. We're running into some significant technology challenges where a lot of the programs that we're in a position to use are not very user friendly when it comes to working with Windows 10. Or the improved technology doesn't work with the older version. So when we go to the newer version, we're trying to get all those things worked out between a couple of the officers who are responsible for our IT as well as county. So we're looking for, if it's approved, we're looking for just short of $22,000 for 6 laptops find out if these semi-rugged blacktop woodwork versus Panasonic top coats that we have currently, and they seem to be working fine, and some of the improvements, I can squeeze in here and there, but those improvements are happening, it seems like it's working. Other than that, that's about all I got. There's not many changes. Hopefully by the end of this year, I'll be able to fill our roster with the qualified candidates that we have. And, that's it. If you have any questions, please feel free.
Mr. Plaza.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, just a real quick clarifying question, because maybe I'm reading this wrong. Under training for 2021 budget, $25,000, is that correct?
Yes.
And we only sent enough guys to training to spend 6,500
I don't think those.
or 7,500?
I don't think those have all been calculated.
No, that was
I
a
know
previous
that
year.
we've gone through some training in the last couple, I think Sergeant Keller went to training, well, a couple of the officers went to training, and they were significant expense.
Okay, so we did spend that pretty much that entire amount.
I'm not sure if we'll make it to that total expense, but.
Okay, yeah, because that's, call me crazy, but that's one of the areas that I think it's okay for us to spend money in.
I agree.
You know,
I agree.
Yeah, okay.
And a lot of that training there was a significant cost reduction because of Zoom training, online training, and so on. So I think we'll definitely see that increase once the COVID restrictions relax a little bit. Because there's a lot of entities that didn't offer in-person training, including some of the stuff that I've gone through the past year.
Yeah, that 7,500 is from fiscal year 20.
Okay.
What we don't have, and that's what I asked for earlier, is what have you spent through the first 9 months of this year? And I agree with you, but this is a prime example of, well, he wants 40,000, but if he's only going to spend 20,000 for the year, that's a great conversation. Tell me a little bit more why you need it. And this would be an area I would tend to agree with you. I think we're a little low on our training dollars, because there's required training that has to occur to keep our officers compliant. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So
there's 24 hours that we're required of continuing education.
And these officers don't do that for free, right? They get paid for that, and that's
Correct.
right. Okay. And is that pay just part of their salaries and benefits? It doesn't actually hit the training bucket. The training bucket is specific for expenses that would be incurred by the classes, the cost just for the class. Registration, hotel,
Lodging,
mileage.
per diem,
Got it.
Yes.
Chief Kelly,
Yes,
that's what you know of training right now. And then the way it looks, how society's going and stuff, it sounds like down the pipeline, there could be a lot more training requirements for the officers could be coming down.
absolutely.
So, yeah, that's what I'm
There's
concerned.
mandatory requirements from the Criminal Justice Training Commission that we have to go to, and those will be a little bit of an incurred cost. What we're trying to do, and the training sergeant, previous training sergeant, did great work doing this, is trying to find everything local that would alleviate a little bit of the cost for lodging and those types of things. But some of the training that is specific, we're not able to do that. Sometimes we have to send them to upwards.
Oh, yeah, I understand that. So I'm concerned about what they're talking about putting on demand for, besides what you guys normally got to do, this other training they're talking about. I'm like, I hope 40,000 is enough, because they're talking about some crazy.
And some of that could change, and it may require us to have a conversation again about increasing or making adjustments.
Yeah.
But right now, it looks like there's some things that will probably come down the pipe as far as what the Criminal Justice Training Commission, the AG's office, and those type of things, once those policies and procedures are in place. But some of those band-aids that we have now are not in place as far as policies and procedures from the AG's office or Criminal Justice Training Commission. So those will be down, and I guess we'll have to talk about that when they show up.
So just to be clear, a lot of this state mandated training that you guys are being forced to do so that everybody feels better about themselves. That's coming out of your training budget? And the state is not paying for it even though they're forcing you to go?
Correct.
That's why I want to bring this up.
Mrs. Holland.
So the second line from the bottom, if you explained this, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Because it jumps from $1,000 to $172,828. So I just wondered what that is.
Well, there's some really cool things embedded in that.
Okay.
The good part.
I hope
The good
so.
part is, I'll start with the cool part. It's 25,000 came from the state as part of the CARES Act money and criminal justice money. And we, council authorized that to go towards our body camera purchase.
Right.
On top of that, the council also authorized an additional $20,000 for that package alone to be able to sustain that for 5 years, because we had to sign a 5-year contract for the camera program. The bigger cost is going to be for the bones of a sally port. Now, the bones would be the framing of the sally port, and I'm in the process of working with Steelscape, who is willing to donate the external, the shell of the sally port. So I'm working with them now to find out what that total package is going to look like. But we would have to incur a little bit of the cost for the interior of that, the bones of the structure itself.
They're an amazing company.
They are.
Except the freeway.
They are. And I learned that last spring, and we started to discuss that, and we're waiting for some final things. And maybe that'll happen, hopefully, maybe in the late winter, early spring.
Cool. Thank you.
Any other questions for Chief Kelly? Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Ms. Coleman, we've got 3
3 minutes.
yeah. No, we've got 3.
That's not good enough.
You've got 3 different things here. If you could just direct us on what packet to start with. I've got capital projects, park, and public works. Where would you like to start? Okay.
I'd like to start on, I just want to go over each section of the whole.
Okay.
So this section here.
For what it's worth, I appreciate the color pictures.
Wow.
Sorry.
Rub it in. Too soon, yeah, too soon.
Well, just so you know, I just want to share that I was told that I wouldn't be able to do that tonight because there was time, but I'm very excited that there is time.
You can just talk 2 days in a row.
No, I will be done tonight. I will be done. If you don't have any questions.
Excellent.
If you don't have any questions.
My goal is that I am so thorough that you have no questions.
Perfect.
Okay, so what I want to start with is something that I have not shared with council, but I did share with my committee. And that's grants. You know, we've talked about grants that we've had for the past few years. And when I do the budget, what I have to budget for, and when I look at my expenditures and revenue side, I look at what are we bringing in grants and what are we putting out in expenditures because of those grants. So I just want to go over a couple of the grants to just share with you that when I do the budget, I've accounted for the revenue on the grant side. I've accounted for some COVID relief dollars when I did the revenue side of it. And then I also accounted for in the expenditure side, what we have to have for the grants that we've already received and accepted. So when I do the budget, that's what I've accounted for. So I just want to share a couple things when I talk about some of the capital projects. So if you want to put those up there, that would be wonderful. I talk about some of the capital projects.
Oh, no, we're back over there.
We have some money left over that I put into the expenditure side of the budget for projects that we're closing out this year. So when I asked for some dollars, it's because the Scott Hill Booster Pump Station, we have a big change order, you know, so I've accounted in the expenditure for that. Go ahead and go to that, please. Thank you very much. Right here, the water treatment filter plant restoration. I have accounted for money in the expenditures for that, for the filter number 1, which, you know, was postponed because of COVID, and then filter number 2, which is going now, is postponed because we're working on filter number 1 right now with the plant. So when I do my expenditure, I've accounted for the water treatment plant 1 and 2, and then next year will be 3, and then the next one. I also have to account for, we did the glory overlay in the ADA ramp. We closed out the ADA ramp portion of it, but I still have some expenditure side that I need to spend next year to close out the glory overlay project. So there's that. Then if we go down to the wastewater plant, we have a few dollars left for the headwork screen replacement project that we did this year. Then if you go down, and these are all that I asked for last year. Lakeshore Drive pedestrian and pavement improvements. So that one right there, when I account for the revenue and expenditure, I account for how much revenue did we receive from the grant on that one, and on that particular one, I gotta hold it. Here. We received $845,000 for this capital project. So out of that, when I do my expenditure, we need $131,000 in matching funds. So I've accounted for that when you look at the streets in Lakeshore. So that's what I've accounted for there. If you look at the West Scott Avenue coal depth reclamation, we have 2 phases. One's on the east side of the tracks, one's on the west side of the tracks. When I put the money in here, we have 2 grants, TIB grants. As we know, it's you know, $1.2 million for each grant. For this grant that we have $125,000 match for each of these grants. So I've accounted for, on the expenditure side, $125,000 for matching each of these phases. In addition to this, to be able to do this full depth reclamation, we have 2 other projects that have to happen in order to do this project. So if you scroll down to the next one, we have the Bnf Pedestrian Crossing. So this one right here on West Scott Avenue, we can't get the grant money without doing this Bnf crossing. So when you look at my expenditure side, I've accounted for $25,000 for Bnf, and then the matching funds for the Section 130 grant that we received. That Section 130 grant we received for this was, here real quick, $500,000. So we received $500,000 in grants, but I have to come up with $25,000 matching. So when you see that there's revenue coming in and there's a little bit of expenditure going out. So if you go to the next one, you look right here at the West Scott Avenue water line crossing. So this is the actual water line that is going underneath the railroad tracks on West Scott Avenue. There is no grant money for this. This is part of our capital expenditures in our capital expenditure program for water. And it's also to help us increase that water flow to go over to that 400 acres that we're developing, right? So on this one, I have no money for that. So I've accounted for in my water plan for $500,000 for this water line crossing. You go to the Davidson water line crossing, which is on the other side of town track. We received $500,000 in grants to do the Davidson water line crossing. So I've accounted for $51,000 of matching funds and streets to match the Davidson water line crossing. So we have 2 different water line crossings. One I have a grant for, one I do not. One has to come out of the water fund from our utilities. The other one comes out of grant funds. If you go to the next one, we have lift station number 8. That's in our capital expenditures, and that's in sewer. So I've accounted for out of the sewer fund the full capital expenditure for lift station number 8, and there's no grant money for that. So I just wanted to kind of go through these capital projects that some of them that are in here, we've already accepted grants, so I'm going to have matching funds. And when I did my expenditure side, I've included all of that in there, so you guys are aware. So.
And some of these, Ms. Coleman, just not to interrupt, but like these water line crossings have been going on for, well, the Davidson one, how long we've been working on that? Over 2 years?
So I've been working on it for 4 years.
Okay.
And it's been from, what's the citizen's name that's come in and wanted it for
Aaron
Stoney.
Stoney. Yeah.
So it's actually
We all know
happening.
her.
It's taken me 2 years to get the permit from the railroad.
Yeah.
So these are really, really long ongoing projects. So I sure as heck hope that, that you understand when I budgeted for them, it's not budgeted, lightly. It's, we have to do it or we lose. If we don't do one of the projects I was going to do, we don't do any of the projects. So you're looking at giving away millions of dollars.
And I'm adding up over $3 million, and with the majority of it being grant dollars.
So, yes, it is over 3 million of just for this next year. And what we've already received to date is 1.5 million that we've already completed.
Gotcha.
Great. And then we have another 13 million that we're working on that we have tentative for X21 that we're working on. So it's a lot of money coming in with very minimal funding on our side. So I'm excited for it. So that's kind of where we're going with the grant.
I'm going to stop you there for just one moment.
Yeah.
Mr. Chapman.
Chief Coleman, you said there's 3 projects you don't have grants for.
Yes,
Has
that I
that,
don't have in my capital expenditures.
has that ship sailed, or is there still a chance you could get grants for these projects?
Oh, no. We can't get grants for some of the projects because
Okay.
they're maintenance projects. They're not new.
Okay.
So, when you're doing regular maintenance, it's hard to get grants for. The only ones we typically will get grants for is TID funding, or like we get the, STBGP fund, which is for Lakeshore Avenue, where we're doing that project itself. But like our, grind and overlay, we don't get grants for that. So I've budgeted $50,000, which I have for the past couple of years. We didn't have it in previous years because we didn't have the funds. But as you can see, the past couple of years, we've been doing grind and overlay. So slowly, I think you see that our roads are getting better and better in Woodland. It's a very, very slow process, but I think you can see it in the sidewalks. You notice the sidewalks throughout Woodland. So we're trying to put together all the missing pieces and start to do that road maintenance. And I'm very grateful for what the council has approved in Public Works to be able to allow us to move forward on getting some of our roads done. So, and the grants that we were able to receive. So, anyway.
Mr. Fredericks?
Can I?
Yeah.
I hate to interrupt you.
Don't interrupt. I'm on a roll.
You're on a roll.
No, go ahead.
I saw the sidewalk, they're putting in the sidewalks over there on Atlantic.
On Atlantic, and we also are doing it on Love Street, yeah.
Yeah. Didn't we get this was probably 3 meetings ago, and I can't, truth be told, I can't remember yesterday at noon, let alone what happened
Okay.
a while back. But I was under the impression, or at some point, we had an additional round of COVID money or something. What was it? The first,
The Fed money that came in? Yeah.
the federal
The
money.
first check, yeah.
The first federal money that we've received. Wasn't that going to be used for, couldn't that be used for infrastructure projects?
Water, and sewer, we're using it for, and it is accounted in my budget.
It is. And are we using that for matching dollars for grants?
No.
We're not allowed to do that?
No, I'm using it for actual infrastructure.
Got it.
That are, part of Westside Avenue. I'll be doing it.
Okay, super.
Okay, so so you guys understand what I'm saying when I put some of the stuff in the budget. And I did go over to the committee. That's why I had a special meeting with that, so I could help them understand some of that.
Please don't take it out. Please don't.
All right, so then let's go to here.
Public Works.
Okay, so what I want to start with is, Park.
Oh.
Park. Okay, yeah, okay. So, right there, what I did last year and what I've done this year is that was what we did this past summer for Hot Summer Nights. I didn't know what day Hot Summer Nights was going to be for 2022, but I do have that and I will update it. So that is, but last year when I did the budget, I gave you 2020 Hot Summer Nights. And so this year I just gave you what we did this last year. When I updated that for you. But I did for the storyline, but I will be working on the Hot Summer Nights dates for this next year. We'll have 7 of those days, starting in June, going through August. So I'll be updating that. But in parks, there's something I just want to share that I've been here for 4 years this month.
Oh, congratulations.
4 years. So I think that lasted at least 3, So I'm really excited. So with that being said.
Keep it up, we can change that.
For 4 years, I've asked a lot of things in parks that I've never gotten it except for one thing, and that is an employee, full-time employee, and I thank you for that.
Even that was a stretch, by the way.
Yeah, and it's still gonna be a stretch, but tell you what I'm asking for.
Okay.
So that being said, I am asking for some items that, they either have to go away or you have to approve them. And so that's pretty much what I'm moving to. So
Love
the
the
first one
Yeah.
is the gazebo. As you know, this, I'm gonna update that. That is kind of hard to read, so I'm gonna talk about this. And the first thing is the gazebo. As you know, this past winter, our gazebo collapsed. The gazebo's been there since, I believe, 70s or 80s. And so the gazebo roof collapsed, so we have two options. We tear it down and get rid of it, or we replace it. It's not, we can't rebuild it.
It's not salvageable.
It's not salvageable.
Yeah.
So I budgeted $15,000 for new gazebo. And that's with volunteer labor hours, that's only for materials.
Okay.
So that's one of the things that are in my park budget. The other one is, we need to replace the cable around Horseshoe Lake. It's starting to break, so the cable that goes all the way around the lake, so it's starting to break, so I put in, budget to replace the cable. We have garbage cans that are rotten on the bottom, so, and water is just leaking out of them, and they're corroded. We painted over it, but if you walk up there, you stick hands in it.
Yeah.
So I counted for a couple garbage cans, not a lot, because they're $500 a piece, but just a couple garbage cans to replace the ones that have the big holes. And then also, a sprinkler system at Horseshoe Lake.
Yeah.
The materials themselves for a sprinkler system is about $12,000. So as you know, we don't have a sprinkler system. We have that big cannon that we shoot out there at Horseshoe Lake. We are having our Planet Day 100th year celebration this year. And, in 2012, Public Works is going to put in a sprinkler system at Horseshoe Lake, and it never happened, so they had bid out and stuff, so I've had it rebid. And we're only talking for the materials, not for the labor, we'll do it ourselves. But, I did put in for the park about $12,000 for materials for sprinkler systems, because I'd like to get that park looking, that field looking, and it would be one that you could drive over, so you don't have to worry about damage on the sprinkler heads, but I'm trying to get that park looking well for our 100th day celebration for Planet Day. So that's one thing that's in there. Also, we have a lawnmower that's, I believe, 17 years old, a riding lawnmower, and we also have a push mower. I don't know the age of push mower, but I know that it's not pushable anymore. So I put in the budget for a riding lawnmower and a push mower, and we need some new tires for our gator, and so that's $25,000 that I put in for that. And then, last but not least,
I don't know.
the
Little bit.
community center. I don't know if any of you have visited the community center lately, but yes, it needs a new roof. It's needed a new roof for 2 years, and we put that off. And siding. So I budgeted $12,000 for roofing and siding for that community center. And if you look at the siding, it's deteriorated. And we're starting to get a rat and rodent infestation in the community center. So it's time for us to seal some stuff and make sure we don't get a water leak, since we just remodeled that 2 years ago. So those are the big budget items for the park. So if you want to cut anything, you're either going to be cutting from a new roof, siding community center, a riding lawnmower, a push mower, gazebo, sprinkler system, garbage cans, and cable replacement. So that's what I put in for. And it's about a $75,000.
So some of the questions that came up in the garbage can, I know that you like $500 for a garbage can, but there, I know, but there's special garbage cans. Can you explain the garbage can?
Yeah, so the garbage cans are not just the round, they're the ones that look like rocks. And so people can't lift them up and take them. You know,
Oh, right.
when you go out there. So
Okay,
that's what
all
they are.
right. I was thinking about the actual metal garbage can. Okay, all right, I'm with you.
And then they run by, and you can't
Yeah.
lift them up and take them, and they
Yeah.
have lids to them, and they also have, liners inside, so everything doesn't sit inside, and, stink, you actually, it has a round liner inside of it, which is garbage can, actual plastic liner.
Yeah.
Previously,
Yeah.
people would pick up and throw them in the lake,
No, I
Yeah.
get, I
and
can
then we have to go retrieve them.
stop grinding my teeth. I thought we were just talking about a regular trash can. I was like, what the
People
hell?
also have to throw their coals in it, or hot coals, after they barbecue, you have to make sure that we don't have fire. So those are, they're special garbage cans. We
Their
have-
kitchen garbage cans go
Well,
to your,
that's what I
they're
was
about that size.
Yeah, Rubbermaid special?
So anyway, so that's, and it's only
You
a
guys
couple,
crush
I
my
believe it's in for, I think 4 is what I put in there. So we're talking $2,000, but anyway, if you want to cut, that's where you cut, stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Mr. Fredericks?
Yes. Mr. Frederick.
My assumption is that these items that you're requesting are not included in your budget, so when we receive the balanced budget that we're gonna get.
They are included in the.
They are included,
Yes.
so, and we still have a balanced budget
Yes.
with these included items.
Yes, sir.
Is there anything that's been mentioned so far this evening that's not included?
No. No,
Mr.
there is not.
I want to look at the entire organization, not just your department.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Goddard, I'm assuming your people are not included.
The halftime code enforcement person is included, the full-time clerk, Steve, is included.
And Mr.
Chief Kelly.
Kelly's,
Chief Kelly.
I forget my own name,
What's your face?
don't be offended,
Yeah,
don't be
what's your
offended.
You with the shiny stuff in hand.
The $50,000 for the new computers, I feel like we've spent $250,000 on those computers in the last 3 years.
No, the computers are not, the body cameras are.
Computers are not, the body cameras are.
Correct.
And do we have a list that will be provided by department of enhancements that are not included in the budget,
I'm gonna get more.
that are not included?
Correct.
And then you'll end up with a list later.
Okay, thank you.
But you had a question about the tires.
They're not $25,000 tires, correct?
No, that's the total for
Or that's,
the riding lawnmower, the tires, and push mowers.
okay,
Oh,
you kind of need that, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. Well, we don't really need anything, but it's desirable to have those items if you want to maintain.
Can't the guys use clippers?
well, the lawnmower, I believe, was requested a couple of years ago, but we didn't have
It
money in the
was,
budget at all.
So these are the capital items that I've pushed off since I've been here.
we don't have a long-term vision or plan for Horseshoe Lake Park as far as what we're gonna do with the big field. I've heard there's been discussions in previous years that we're going to put blacktop on it and we are going to create parking spots
No,
and,
no, if
Yeah.
anything, I would look for some type of, well, we have the RCO grant, splash pad,
yeah,
and the additional restroom down by the skate park. But also looking at probably AstroTurf, which could be used year round, and
okay,
possibly have teams that could also use that in addition to, Scott Hill Park. Because Scott Hill Park, if it doesn't have AstroTurf, you're not gonna be able to use it year round.
imagine if you could put a AstroTurf soccer field over there,
How about
And
an
that-
AstroTurf football field?
football,
That
Rugby.
could be used for multiple
yes,
sports. 'Cause
Rugby.
Soccer,
can be used for
football,
everything. Football
right.
can be used for everything.
yeah,
It could be used for track, it could be used for soccer, it could be used for a multitude of things aside. So I don't know how long that one's going to
Chapel.
be. But my envision, my personal vision is AstroTurf on there somehow, some way. It's very expensive, but,
we'll put that over the sprinklers.
no. So we're not gonna get there anytime soon, but in the meantime, we can at least keep that grass looking green, which it hasn't looked green for a number of years. And it's rather embarrassing when you have a picture in the paper of brown grass when you're trying to host a summer event. Come to Woodland and they show you dead grass with kids dancing and straw in their hair. So I'm just saying it would be nice
And
to
dust
have
buggers.
some green grass.
Just-
Anyway.
Just keep in mind with
Definitely.
some of the folks in our community have a rough time keeping their own grass green and
Oh,
that's
well,
something that's.
that's the reason why
afford to
you have an irrigation system and you have it set on a timer and you only water certain times.
I try to water.
And if we have a water source, you don't water.
Yeah.
Okay,
Keep going.
anything else for parks?
Anything else for parks?
Okay, so let's talk about, I'm gonna skip streets because it's long. I'm gonna go into water, okay? So in water, the biggest expense we're gonna have is staffing. And that's because we need to have additional staff in, our water plant for training to be able to test. So we have 2 more water staff that we are bringing in. We have 1 person who's retiring this next year, which you guys are aware of. So we'll be advertising and we'll have some overlapping hours for water. And then the other thing that I have in the water budget is professional services for our capital projects, which are our Randy well laterals that we'll be doing, our Davidson Waterline Crossing, because while we have a grant, we have matching funds. Part of the matching funds are for my professional services, so that's in there. We have a repair for, I'm sorry, I digress. I moved forward, excuse me. We also have the West Scott Avenue Waterline Crossing that we have engineering services fees for. We have an engineering services left for filter 1 and filter 2. So I've included in the budget engineering services. I've also included in there our regular distribution expenses of about $33,000. And then also our change order for the Scottsdale Booster Pump, which is about $18,000. I've included cleaning the reservoir. That, even though we have the bids and you've approved that, that will be happening probably in January. And that's $5,000 that I have in here, additional funding for that reservoir. And then we have $64,000 for the 500,000 gallon reservoir repair. We had bid payment for that, but there was a $100 discrepancy, so we're going to be rebidding that $500,000 repair, which is required by MRSC. So I budgeted $64,000 for the repair based on past repair costs and a little bit of inflation. I also have, now here's where we talk about the COVID dollars. I have $1.2 million for the West Scott Crossing water line, the Davidson water line crossing and West Scott. So we have the asbestos water line that is going down West Scott Avenue on the east side of the track, and then we also have the Davidson water line crossing itself, which is going underneath the railroad track. So I budgeted our COVID relief dollars to cover that cost for those two items. And then also I have a shared truck cost here. It's going to be between water, sewer, and street, which will be our final truck for probably a number of years. And that's to replace our superintendent's truck, which is 17 years old and has 107,000 miles. So it'll be our last truck. As you know, we've replaced water and sewer trucks. The last couple of years, we've taken their used trucks and we've moved them down to public works. And one of them was in such bad shape that we actually put it on the auction list. And then the other one we are utilizing, we use for the summer help. But this will probably be the last truck that we'll need because we will now have 2 new trucks in public works and have a new truck in water sewer. So hopefully this will be the last one we need for 10 years. Or at least 7 years. I'll say that because we have to go to one here. So working on that truck inventory. And then also I have filter number 1. I have the dollars in there for filter number 1 that we're working on right now because we just started that project. That's $218,000 I have left for that. I have $377,000 for the filter number 2 that we'll be working on up there. And then I also have for the media that's in the filter and lagoon cleaning that we do. And that's $31,000 in there. I also have, it's time to do our rainy well laterals that we do every so many years. So I have $126,000 in there for our rainy well laterals to be able to work on those. And then I have a power transfer switch for the generator and new reservoir is one thing that I do not have in the budget. And that's the 1.8 million. If we do decide to do the new reservoir, we'll go ahead and borrow on that for, we'll be bonding on that for the new reservoir. So as of right now, that's my water expenses. All that is part of the balance budget based on the revenue that we'll be bringing in.
When we talk about the water reservoir, though, that is part of the water study that came out, that it will be done. Yeah.
Plan on borrowing bonding for that project. I don't know if I'll be able to get to that reservoir and be able to get some bonding done this next year. I put it in there, but I haven't put it in the actual budget itself, but I put it in the, I'm trying to get to it.
But that is something that's one of those projects that it's another project that could be kicked down the road, but eventually it's part of the water rates that we're paying right now.
It is.
Yeah.
And actually the biggest part of it to prepare for that is to get that hillside cleared off where we had the timber removed last year.
Mm-hmm.
Then I need to get all of the stumps removed out of there and get that ground.
Get it prepped.
Probably the thing that I'll do this next year. So any questions on the?
But that's not budgeted yet.
That is not, but
Okay.
the stump grinding and removal of stumps is, but the reservoir itself is not.
Okay. questions for Ms. Coleman on that? Anything else, Ms. Coleman?
Not on water. Ready for sewer?
Yes.
All right. So in sewer,
Number 2.
I actually am not spending
Oh.
as much.
We're gonna stop right there. I'm sorry, there is a question for a quick break. I can give you 6 minutes.
I don't only need like 2.
Oh, okay. We'll go into recess for, well, let's just do 4 minutes.
Take 3 and wash your hands.
This conference will now be recorded.
Let's talk about sewage.
Number 2.
Back on?
Back on.
Yeah.
All right. So
And
what I
go.
wanted to share with everybody is that, everything that I'm going over, that I'm speaking to right now, you will have a PDF document of the grants that I talked about. You'll have a PDF document of everything that I'm blabbing out loud here that's sent to the committee. I will make sure you have that tonight before I leave, so you'll have that to look at if you want to make any cuts for whatever reason. But everything, again, I'm telling you is in a balanced budget. So you shouldn't have to cut anything, but if you find you want to cut it to give it to a different department for whatever reason, you can see those items, and I put the line items in there, what I've accounted for and what you might be able to cut. For instance, if you decide you don't want to leave those, and you want to get that money to the police or whatever you want to do out of general fund, you'll have that.
We won't help police.
Can I have a request?
Yeah.
Is it possible to get this information in a binder by department like we have had in previous years without causing the city administrator to pull out his hair?
Well,
Color?
So
Yeah,
mine
maybe
is,
color too.
mine's 3 pages, it's just a 3-page.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll get it organized and
I
over
hate
to you.
piecemeal. I'm sorry. I'm just
Yeah.
me.
I'm just telling you about what I'm talking about.
Okay, thank you so much.
The answer is yes. Well, are you? Okay.
Got it.
The answer is yes.
Non-colored copy.
Okay.
It'll be black and white.
Yes.
Excellent.
No color.
Thank you. No pictures.
Okay.
No soup for you.
So in sewer, if we're talking about sewer dollars, I will tell you that, the budget that I put together this year is less than the revenue that we're bringing in. So we'll be able to put a little bit more money in our reserves, which is great because we have some projects that are coming up, some lift stations that we'll be doing some work on the following year. So it'll be good that we have that money sitting on our reserves. So I accounted for professional services for lift station number 8. We're going to be renewing lift station number 8. And I've accounted for capacity analysis, which is where I'm talking about, or we're going to have some additional funds that we're going to have to spend in future years on lift stations 2, 3, 9, 1, 5, and 11. So those are some stations that we just want to run our analysis on to make sure that we're where we need to be for development. So then we have money set aside to rebuild lift station number 8, and that was in the capital plan that we showed you earlier. And then we also have money for lift station 4 that I've budgeted for $500,000 there. And then we have a lid and repair in the road for lift station number 1, that I budgeted for that. And then our back contract for preventive maintenance, which we did this year. So I budgeted for our preventive maintenance contract to back out our lift station on a regular basis. I've also accounted for 2 pumps and covers for lift stations. Excuse me, let me rephrase that. I've accounted for the covers for 2 of our lift stations. So this summer, we've had to go out multiple times to go out and put pop-up tents over our lift stations because they've been failing. So I've counted to start covering these lift stations, build small permanent structures over the lift stations so we don't have to have man hours go out and put up pop-up tents and tie them down and things that are going to get stolen and all that. So we're starting to do small structures for our lift stations. And then I've also accounted for 2 pump replacements in lift station number 1 and 2, $55,000. 2 are backup generators for 2 lift stations. So we have backup generators right now on trailers to be able to keep lift station 3 and 4, which is by the visitor center and by the AMPM. To keep those up and running, those are our 2 main where everything flows into those. So we have backup generators when we had a power outage 2 Saturdays ago. We were able to put the generators on those to keep everything flowing smoothly, but at the same time, we have to go out and run and pump the other lift stations. So I've accounted for 2 additional smaller generators to keep some of the lift stations going and to keep the other ones pumped. So it's just baby steps a little bit at a time. So I've accounted for that, and then also I accounted for $13,000 for a shared truck cost, and then new SCADA system at the sewer plant. And again, all of it is part of balanced budget, and we have additional money going through.
And
Questions on sewer?
the water study. So how much of that was part of the water study that we just did?
I don't have anything for water.
This is sewer. Sorry.
Do we still have wooden lines for our sewer in some areas?
No. I think the last one came out. We came across one when we dug up. We came across an old piece of
But
old.
we don't have that anymore, right? That's
No.
all
No,
done?
no.
Yeah, we have a special water right.
Okay, well, that's another day. Oh, that's great. That makes
Okay,
complete
so any
sense.
questions on sewer?
Nope.
Okay.
I know.
All right, then the last thing I'll get into is
Water
streets.
lines, what the cost is.
A lot of the items for streets are matching grant dollars that I've covered when I went over the grant application. So, the first thing is we have some additional staffing costs that we have, 2 additional street crew that we're bringing in, and we're also replacing Dennis Rick's position. So we'll have a little bit of overlap this year on that, but, not so much. Sorry, I just received an email from, Mrs. Rick asking me for something. Caught me off guard. I apologize for that. But anyway, in our street, we have 2 street crew that we are budgeting for, and then we also have a washed-up pedestrian crossing and BNSF. So we have the washed-up funds that we received, grant funds for the pedestrian crossing on West Scott Avenue, but we also have some additional funding for BNSF. So I have accounted for matching funds for those grants. And then I also accounted for some torch down and paint. As you know, we do torch down around town for the stop bars and the crosswalks. So I accounted for those. Those are just regular budgeted items that I put in there. We also accounted for some drainage issues that we've had around town for a number of years. So I've kind of pulled some dollars out this year and said we have some drainage issues on 3rd Street, catch basin repairs around town. We have drainage issues on Brothers Road, Embassy Loop drainage. So I've accounted for fixing some of those roads drainage. And then also a chip seal. Like I told you, we've been chip sealing our roads. So I've accounted for $50,000 in our chip seal, which we do with the county, with Calais County. And then also I counted here, here's something if you wanted to take money out, $5,000 for a touch shed. We have items that are stored in some of our shop at Public Works. And so we want to get some of those items out in the shop so we have more room to work within the shop area. So I've accounted for a touch shed to store some of our materials in that they can deal with heat or cold freezing conditions. So I've accounted for getting a touch shed moved on site. And then also I have the matching funds for Lakeshore Avenue. It's included in there for that grant. And then I have some sidewalk repairs on Pacific, Delilah, Wildflower, and Love Street that I've accounted for sidewalks. I've also accounted for another item, which is a new trailer for our Kubota and our track. And the reason why is we have an old, what kind of trailer was it, Dennis?
Snowmobile.
A snowmobile trailer that we use, and that snowmobile trailer that we've used, it's been kind of man-made, it kind of tilts, so when you're driving our Kubota up and our track, it kind of tips back instead of going forward, so, and staying straight, and it's higher than the regular trailer. So I've accounted for a new trailer for our Kubota that we've needed for years. It's more of a safety hazard, and the guys just made me aware of it this year because they had a near-miss experience when they were loading it. So I thought, well, $3,500 isn't a lot of money to throw into the budget. So we did that. I also have the $13,000 for that other third cost of the truck coming out of there. And then I have $81,000, which is matching funds for a CW Pause grant. And that's when we move forward, if we get the other grant from Jamie Herrera's Butler's office, we'll have to match that CW Pause when we start engineering on our. So one thing in here too, another thing that I have is $45,000 for a truck bed. So we have we have pretty expensive equipment at Public Works, and we like to keep it in fairly good shape. So one of the items we don't have is a place to store all of our stuff out of the weather. So I've accounted for $45,000 for a truck bay. It's just a regular metal 3-sided bay where you can just back the trucks in, similar to what we have up at the water plant and what we have there now. As you can see, if you drive by it, they're always full of equipment. So I just accounted for putting our trucks in there. So if you wanted to cut costs and give that to another department, that would be a cost you need to be able to cut there. something I have not accounted for now. In streets, I'm about $500,000 short in streets. And the reason why I'm short is because I've accounted for some grants that we might possibly get, and that's with Davidson, Pekin, and Gun Club. If we get those grants, we're gonna have about $350,000 in matching funds in order to do those roads. And also, there's, we have some, on Gun Club, there's some drainage issues. I'm sure all of you who live around here, you've seen that. That's about a $100,000 repair. I haven't included that in here. I kept putting it in every year, and I have to keep cutting somewhere, so I keep cutting that one out. So that one I haven't accounted for either. And then there's a miscellaneous about $50,000 to keep a balanced budget that I've taken out of here where I think I can cut $50,000 cost and overall what I just discussed. So does anybody have any question in street?
When do you find out about the grants coming forward?
We find out in March. So,
Okay.
I don't know what we have in reserve for our streets at this time off the top of my head, but that would be something that, I mean, it's gonna be very rare that we get all three of them, but we probably will get one of
I
them.
don't know.
So at that time, I'll come back to council and ask for a budget amendment if we have the funding to accept that grant and tell you what we're gonna do in that. So,
It's really sad. Mr. Fredericks,
You know, if we have bonding capacity at all on streets as a general fund, so you would councilmatic bonds?
if it came down to it.
If it came down to it, I mean, if
But we don't also, aren't we going out for our transportation, benefit district?
well, you're not gonna see any revenue in that for a while.
It'll be a bit,
Yeah,
but
so anyway, I think that, you know, we might not get it. We've been pretty generous in getting some grant funding for some maintenance on our roads the past couple of years, so it would not surprise me if we did not receive any money. That's why I didn't put it in the budget, because we've been given a lot of money very generously by, different, what would I say, different government entities, for our road maintenance, which is really what we have in our funding anyway. We should be able to get it on the road. But
Is there a reason, I can't remember what the reason was, why we keep putting off the stormwater district thing? Didn't we just vote to
we did
not,
vote to pass it, and we're waiting for our water utility rates to put them all under effect at the same time. When we do our utility rates and we vote.
monthly billing.
She's absolutely right. So we're going to do it all in one place. So what we've talked about is not increasing the rate until my application. So we're most likely looking February.
Yeah, when we get that final contract done, so we figured by the first quarter, yeah.
and then, because that'll put it at like, what, a year? It's taken a year to hammer that out. Wow. My other question is, so Gun Club.
Yeah.
What part of Gun Club has drainage? I mean, like, I live a block over, so I'm just curious as to what part.
My understanding is that when you're coming down the hill, and you get kind of to the bottom of the hill, that it always floods there. It's an intersecting road right there.
Well, do you want to know why?
Oh, yeah, okay.
That used to be okay, so that was all a farm back there, and it was always underwater, right? So at the bottom of that runs through where people used to go and sight in their guns, but it literally had a humongous creek back there. So if they put a road over a creek bed, it would make sense that it would,
Would flood.
right,
So a lot of that can be mitigated though, if you have the correct drainage, road drainage, you know. So I think that, I've been talking to our engineer, Rob D, when he was here, and it's my understanding that we can redo the storm drainage there, which is better help with the flow, with the flooding that got flow. So we can put it in some additional storm drainage and to allow it to drain, right? So that's the game plan.
just out of curiosity, so everything at the bottom of that hill, like all the developments that are now butted up against the hill, do they all flood?
I don't think so. I think there's just a couple of them, and that's that gun club, and there was one other,
Embassy look, Yeah,
And missing, yes.
Those are the two ones that
because that used to always be swampland, because it was a big dairy farm that ran across the whole back, like where all those houses are.
Yeah.
Used to be a big old dairy farm back in the day. And then, that was a logging road, now they have houses up there. But I was just curious because, I mean, there was a creek back there, like a literal creek, so I don't know what they did, if they just like.
They transplanted the salmon to another area.
And then they just like backfilled it with dirt and slapped some road on it.
Well, Councilmember Mullen, I can't discuss that, I can't answer that, because I'd have to go and look at the plan set to see how it was developed and how they diverted the water, because when you do develop a property, you have to divert the water, and you have to have it go somewhere else.
Right.
If you have wetlands, you have to create another wetland, and so on and so forth. So I really don't know without looking at the engineer drawings to see how they diverted the water and why it should flood, because it really should not flood. If you divert the water correctly, and you've taken care of that. But it wasn't taken care of correctly, or it wouldn't be flooding. So whether that's you build a little, bridge over a creek or whatever you have to do, I don't know without looking at those plans. I wish I could address why it floods, but I can't at this time. I just know that it does, and looking at with our engineering, that they stated that by putting in additional storm drainage capacity, that we should be able to bypass the flood. If you know from that, you can't.
So I do know a little bit more about this area. That entire area is floodplain. And the flood elevation is considerably above Gunflood Road and the neighborhood yard. So in fact, that area is developed in a way that will flood. It will not flood the houses, but it will flood the yards and the streets by design, because it is a floodplain of the Lewis River. So technically what happens is, as the Lewis River rises, there is a culvert underneath 503, and it is at an elevation where the water that's coming out of the hill, or the culvert, the water coming out of the hill will not be able to drain into the river since the river is higher. So that isn't river water that's coming up into that neighborhood. It's actually from the hill that can't make it out to the river. So by design, it is going to flood. So the reason why I know that is because I just reviewed a no net rise analysis for the Lewis River and that subdivision that just got approved in there. And there's going to be a lot of, you may potentially get calls because they're going to be doing a ton of grading in that field to raise it up. And they are grading it in a way that will have no net rise for the rest of the neighborhood. So you're going to get calls that there's going to be additional grading, but that is not for that there's additional flooding. That in fact is not correct. The existing homes like Baxter and Embassy and Statesman, they may start to flood as they are designed, but it's not a result of that subdivision. They were designed to flood, but that's flood storage, and their yards are intended to be flooded by design.
So, and by design, meaning the developer that approached the city and said, here you go, and the city said, sounds good. Okay.
And I'm sure when those were purchased, those homes were purchased, that had to be disclosed, so I knew what I was buying.
Everybody's, it was closed here.
And you probably have flood insurance.
Well, I'm in a floodplain, but there were people who ran again, there were people who ran for the mayor's position and for council due to my development. The development that at least 3 of us live in that are up here was a very significant thing because they raised our level higher. And a lot of people were bent out of shape about that, I guess, enough to where they decided to run for elected office.
I'm glad to see that it worked.
It didn't, yeah, it didn't.
Because there's homes there.
Still homes there.
Yeah.
So
Did you have a question? I'm sorry.
Well, I appreciate the answer.
Yeah,
That was kind of-
I
You
appreciate
get your
that.
answer. Okay.
Give me feedback. I think.
Mr. Plaza?
No.
Oh, I thought you raised your hand. I thought I saw you in the corner. Sorry.
He's ready for bed.
Anything else? You got your question answered, Mrs. Holland?
I did.
Okay,
I didn't know it flooded over there. I guess I never go.
by design.
I guess it was by design.
Okay,
All right, 20 questions on street. And know that if we do get grants, I'll be coming back and asking for a budget amendment. And I will let you know where that money is coming from at that time after I talk to Mr. Boyd.
okay.
So, all right, so, and as you guys requested, you don't want me to send that to you in an email. You would rather have it in not piecemeal, but give it to me, and we'll put it together, right? So you don't want it emailed to you, correct?
Correct.
Okay, I will not email it to you. I will give it to Pete, and you will put a nice package in it.
Perfect. We have 10. Oh, did you have anything else, Ms. Coleman?
Well, I'm just asking, do you guys have any other?
Nope.
Not yet,
Budget?
not yet,
Not yet.
but I got a place where I can find some additional money if those priorities
Yes.
Oh, geez.
look a little different.
That makes
so.
me nervous.
Oh, yes, it does. It
Well,
does.
at least I give you the option.
I like options.
You have one more chance.
Thank
That's
you.
what it's about. Options.
Thank
Okay,
you
so
so
that's all I
much.
have.
All right, the time is now 9:50. Mr. Boyce, can you do yours in like 8 minutes? Or do you want to wait?
Well,
You want to give it a try?
well, you know what, let's wait till.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr.
I
Boyce.
think that's.
My attention span is,
It's another question, but the next way over.
yeah.
Ben's questions will make us run over.
All right.
No, that's fine. Okay,
So,
Go
just
ahead.
out of curiosity though, we didn't have like specific park. So most of this park stuff was just horseshoe, right? That's all we were talking about. There's nothing in any, Ms.
For Hoffman
Coleman,
and Gordon.
in your parks plan or your parks request, was there anything for other parks besides horseshoe, like all the littler ones?
I actually have that in the regular maintenance repairs report.
Okay.
So when we have playground equipment that fails, we'll bring, load of
Yeah.
action, or if we have a picnic table that needs replaced, or we had some, rubber, grommets and stuff that need to be replaced. I've already budgeted for that in the regular maintenance, for our other parks. So when I talk, I always say Horseshoe Lake is the biggest park, and that's a great question, but I do budget for small minor repairs in the other parks. Yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Do we put fresh mulch and cedar chips in those parks?
Yes, we did. We did at all the
thought
parks.
so.
We put engineered wood chips in all of the parks this year.
Yeah, they
And
look
last
good.
year.
They
Well,
really
and there,
look
a
good.
couple of years ago, we put in new borders that were
We did.
ADA accessible and,
ADA accessible.
Yeah.
Yeah, like 3 parks. We put.
yeah, it's awesome.
Yep, Eagle Park, Hoffman Park, and, what's the other one? I don't know what else.
Gordon don't have anything.
The one across from the school, which one's that one?
Hoffman,
Hoffman
That's
Park.
no, it's
No,
Hoffman.
that's Hoffman.
It was Hoffman. We did
Eagles
there,
over.
we did ADA.
Oh,
Eagle, it was Eagle.
what, the Bjork,
Bjork.
Bjork Park, that one got one too.
I don't think the city has looked this good in I mean, it really
Oh,
looks
yeah,
good.
it's coming along.
And that's
Baby steps.
that's your leadership and your crew.
It's,
to make that happen.
Well, no, it's actually, it's everybody. It's you guys believing in our budget and what we're budgeting for and allowing us to have the funds to do it. It's our crew going out and doing the work. It's the grant dollars we get from other agencies. It's a whole combination of factors. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm starting to see little bits of changes. I get really excited when we finish a little section of sidewalk that ties the whole thing together.
Yeah.
That's exciting to me. Little tiddly stuff. It's like everything's like half finished, and when I kind of see it finished, I like that. It's just that continuity throughout the city. And if you notice that we have our signs, we're getting the signs pinned up. We have volunteer agencies. We have partnerships with the Southwest Fish
Steelhead.
Steelheaders Association. So Gory Park, look how nice Gory Park stays. Then we also have the Kiwanis group that's taking care of our roundabout.
Right.
And now they're taking care of our signs coming to the city.
Oh, they are?
So we
Oh, I
have
didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize
We
that.
have
It's looking nice.
partnerships with lots of entities that
Nice.
are making the city look good as a whole, and I really am very blessed with everybody that comes together. Yeah, it's not me, it's the whole, it's the team, it's the teamwork. Oh, and the new development.
I guess it depends on where it's built, huh?
And they do pay into for us to be able to have matching funds for our parks, that we got for grants for parks, that's about pretty much done.
How much money did we get from county development? Never mind.
Good one.
We did
Good one.
get some county
Good one.
grants.
Well, they gave us $500,000 for the water line. So they did help out.
Thank you.
And that.
And we're working on some other partnerships right now.
Right.
So you can't,
Thank you, Calhoun County.
yes,
Yes.
I can't say anything poor.
No, I can't.
They're really trying to work with us right now.
It's about time.
The time is
I
now
don't think so.
9:55.
Oh.
Good one, Dave.
Move
Oh.
to adjourn.
Oh, we already got one on the
Second.
floor. Mr. Smith is asked to adjourn, second by Councilmember Chapman. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The time is now 9:55. Thank you, everybody.
I know.